Hello and welcome everyone to the September 16th, 2025 Landmark Preservation Commission meeting. We begin each meeting by introducing ourselves. I will start. My name is Erica Warzel. I am an architectural historian and a preservation consultant, and I was nominated by the community at large.
Hello, I'm Emily Hazen. I am a preservationist and designer nominated by City Planning.
I'm Nick Fusianis. I'm an architect and a developer, and I was nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
I'm Larry Sykes. I'm an architect and I was nominated by History Colorado.
I'm Rusty Brown. I'm an architect and I was nominated by AIA.
I am Lars Bildman. I'm a builder and contractor and was nominated by the Mayor's Office.
And I'm Brittany Bryant, Denver Landmark Preservation staff.
All right. And if it wasn't clear, I called us to order at 1 o'clock p.m. So we have, before we move on to our meeting records, this is just a general time for comments either from commission or staff. Commissioners or staff, any comments? No comments. Okay. All right. Now we have two meeting records that were sent to us ahead of time for review. We don't need to vote on those, but we can note any corrections that need to be made if anyone has any corrections they'd like to see. All right, so it sounds like those are good to go. Now I'll give some audio tips for those of you joining us virtually. For better sound quality, we strongly encourage you to download Zoom on your device. And from there, you can click audio settings to bring up an additional menu to add a background noise suppression and test your speaker and microphone to adjust their output volumes. And then for those of you who will be planning to speak, we suggest that you familiarize yourself with the mute or unmute button, which is the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. You can also expand the menu next to it to reveal additional options, such as selecting your speaker and microphone devices to make sure they're connected, testing those microphone and speakers, and adjusting their volumes. If you still have audio challenges, we ask that you switch to phone for audio. All right, now this is our public comment period. This is for items on our consent review agenda, design review agenda, business items and discussion items, or about historic preservation in general. This is not for our public hearing part of the agenda, which will be occurring later, and we'll have specific instructions for those. So for this public comment period, anyone who would like to speak may have up to 2 minutes, again, to provide comments on historic preservation in general or any items on our agenda besides the public hearing. So we will not be entertaining further comments on those topics later in the meeting. So we ask that you indicate now if you'd like to speak. And again, if you're joining us virtually, you can click the hand raise button in Zoom or dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand if you're joining by phone. Please email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number if you're having difficulty with either hand raise option, so we know to help you through the Zoom app. All right, we'll begin with anyone here in person, again, not related to our public hearing agenda item. If you would like to make a comment, please indicate, and we'd ask you to come up to the table. Anyone here in person, is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment for this period? No. Right. Okay, I'm sure there are some of you who will be wanting to speak for the public hearing, and again, we'll give you specific instructions for that period. All right, we are ready to move on to our consent agenda. We initially had 3 items on our consent agenda, but one has been removed at the request of the applicant, so we have 2 to consider. These are routine projects that the landmark staff has determined meet the design guidelines for Denver landmark structures and districts and are recommended for commission approval without discussion. We may approve these items as a group, but if any commission member would like to have one of these removed and considered more fully under design review, we will do so. So I will announce the two items and then ask commission members to give any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest that they need to announce. And then indicate if they have any desire to remove an item from the consent agenda for design review instead. And then we will have a commission motion and vote. If your project is approved on this consent agenda, you're welcome to leave the meeting, but you're also welcome to stay and watch or participate as desired. So the two consent agenda items we have are application number 2025-TAXC-026 at 3731 North Zuni Street in Potter Highlands, and 2025-TAXC-024 at 3030 North Newton Street in Wolf Place. Commissioners, any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest? And are there any items on this agenda that you would like to discuss for design review instead? Would someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Thank you, Larry. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Emily. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes, and again, you have had your project approved if you are on the consent agenda. All right, we are moving on to our public hearing. I'll again go through this, what we're about to do here. So these are items that require a public hearing, such as landmark designation applications and certain demolition requests. Signs are posted on the property in advance of the meeting, and courtesy notification is sent to registered neighborhood organizations and Denver Landmark Preservation Partners. For each item, following the applicant and staff presentations, and in this case, owner presentation, I will call for public comment. And again, we'll have more specific instructions on that in just a bit. Commissioners, our public hearing is for application 2025L-005 at 800 South Franklin Street. Do you have any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest that you need to announce? All right. First, we'll hear from staff who will introduce the application and their recommendation, after which we may question staff. We will then hear from the applicant, who has up to 10 minutes altogether, after which we may question the applicant team. We will then hear from the owner team, again, limited to 10 minutes altogether, and after which we may question the owner. And then we will have the public comment period, which is anyone who would like to speak from the public has up to 3 minutes per person. And again, we'll have more specific instructions when we're ready for that public comment period. Then after public comment, we'll have any staff clarifications if needed before the commission moves into deliberation, and then for a motion and vote. All right, so take it away, Kara.
Can you open the
Yes,
public
okay,
hearing?
so my
Oh,
name
I have officially opened the public hearing at 1:09 p.m. Thank you.
Thanks. My name is Kara Hahn. I'm the Landmark Planning and Regulatory Supervisor, and we are here for the case at 800 South Franklin Street. This is an owner opposed designation. I'm going to go over the process with you guys a little bit, go over staff findings, public comments. So this property is located in Council District 6 in the East Wash Park neighborhood. It's on the corner of Ohio Avenue and Franklin Street, directly across the street from Wash Park. Its zoning is USUC. The owners are 800 South Franklin Developers LLC, owned by Robin and Tony. And then the applicants are Stephanie, Jody, and Susan. Next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit about the process as of how we ended up here. So we first received a demolition application in January of 2021. The notice was publicly posted on the property. Members of the community came forward with a couple of different notices of intent to file a designation application. There were a series of facilitated stakeholder meetings, and it ended with an MOU between that property owner and the residents for both to withdraw. The applicants would not submit a designation application, and the property owner would withdraw the demolition. Between then, over the next several years, then the property was sold in February of 2025 to Robin and Tony. They applied for then the second demolition application, and that was received in May of this year. We again posted public notice for that. And then we again received multiple notices of intent that were submitted by the community. And then, as you guys are aware, there was an extension of the deadline in order to try to find a win-win solution. Unfortunately, no agreement could be reached, and the designation application was submitted on the last day of the posting period. So we are now here at the Landmark Preservation Commission public hearing. Slide, please. So this is the proposed boundary of the designation application. So it was submitted, and then this is the in red is the proposed boundary, which is the legal parcel. The application used the parcel information based on the city assessor's office. We, for all designations that are submitted, also send it to the city attorney or city surveyor's office for them to look at it. They had some slight tweaks to it, and the what we would consider the updated survey information and legal description is in the staff report. It's for the same parcel, the same information, just the city surveyor used slightly different language they would recommend if it would move forward to city council. Okay, so I just want to go over a little bit of landmark designation, how we're here, why we're here, what our process is. So we were established in 1967 with the purposes of designating, preserving, and protecting historic resources. And next slide. We were allowed to do designations. Part of that process is that it's typically community driven. It comes from members of the community. It can come from property owners. It can come from the community planning and development executive director. It can come from city council members, or it can come from 3 residents of Denver, which is how we are seeing this particular designation coming forward. And then we are required to follow the ordinance and the requirements in order to designate, which are that a property maintains its integrity, is 30 years of age or older, meets at least 3 out of the 10 criteria, and that you at LPC consider the historic context of how this was developed. Next slide. Okay, so this is now Landmark staff's findings based on chapter 30 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code, which is the landmark ordinance. So of the landmark designation criteria, the application put forward that it was significant under 4 different criteria. We will go through each of the 4 to discuss landmark's recommendations and findings on the application was submitted. So the first, that it has direct and substantial association with recognized persons or groups of persons who would influence on society. The application puts forward that it is significant for Judge William H. Burnett. He was served as a judge for 17 years at the Denver County Court, and then 1 year as the district court. Of the he lived at the property, and him and his family, or he lived at the property for 11 years, which coincided with the last 11 years of his time as a court judge. He was a prominent jurist. He did a variety of either innovative or reform activities. He did a court honor class where people could various members of the community could not always spend all their time in jail. They could work from home, or they could work and then go to jail. They did a work release for that. There was a juvenile volunteer probation that ended up lowering recidivism of juveniles for that. There were alcohol related things in order to just working for the community and sort of a reform activist. He also helped implement a 10% bail bonds here in Denver. It was part of a movement in the 1960s to revise bail bonds nationwide, and he was the one who did this here in Denver so that someone didn't have to spend and put the entire amount for bail up, but they could do a 10%, which he found, it was inequitably residents of Denver were faced with inequities on that of having to provide the full amount. So he helped pioneer that here in Denver and started in Denver. It was a nationwide movement in the 60s. He did that here in Denver, actually caused some issues with the bail bondsmen. And so he was a very prominent jurist here. It coincided with his 10-year residency or 11-year residency in the property with sort of those 11 years of his reformist and jurist actions. Brittany, next slide. He was nationally recognized. He served as chair of the American Bar. He was the president of the Judicial Research Foundation. He was the first municipal judge within the country to hold that position. And then the American Bar established the William H. Burnett Award to honor him after his passing. And that award is still given out today. So he was a nationally recognized judge who resided in this property during the primary years of his activism and work on the bench here in the city and county of Denver. So staff finds that it is has a direct association with him and his time at the house. The application also talks about several of the women who lived at 800 South Franklin. Many of them were widowers throughout the course of the 130 years of this, widowers who supported their family, and individually, each of them probably does not rise to the level of significance. They're not a renowned judge, but taken as a whole as a group of persons, these four, I believe there are 4 women in particular, who really exemplify women who are working to support their family when so often women weren't the people who were known for that, and they weren't recognized for that. So it's Elizabeth Bradley, Haiti Sterling, Catherine Ensley, and Clara Wides. And so each of these 4 women worked in the home, did things to support their family. And so as a whole, Landmark staff found that the house represented this group of women who were widows and trying to support their family in a time when women weren't really recognized for their work. And then finally, the application also talks about the Baum and Bartel families as being substantially associated with this property. While both families were part of the development of the town of South Denver, of Smith's Ditch in what's now known as Smith's Ditch in Wash Park, with a variety of Denver businesses, with the subdivision of the particular block and the development of Wash Park, Landmark does not find that they had substantial association with this property. The house at 800 South Franklin Street was built after their ownership, and based on nationwide preservation policy, we do not find that they should be associated with it because the house was built after their ownership. So Landmark staff finds that it is significant and agrees with the application or concurs with the application that it's significant for Judge Burnett and for the women who resided there, but not for the Baum and Bartel families. Recommendation in our staff report. Secondly, the application puts forward that the property embodies the distinctive visible characteristics of an architectural style or type. So the application says that it is a free classic variant of the Queen Anne style, which is a refinement of the broader Queen Anne movement. So staff concurs that it has the visible characteristics of an architectural style, with the steeply pitched roofs, the cross gables, the massing of it, the projecting bays, the decorative window surrounds are evident for the Queen Anne, and then the classical entablature and columns on the front porch representing the free classical variant of it. So Landmark staff finds that it embodies the distinctive physical characteristics of an architectural style. And I can talk a little bit about the integrity at a later point, but we did feel like that there was sufficient characteristics that are still visible and that it represents the architectural style. Thirdly, the application puts forward that it represents an established and familiar feature of the neighborhood, community, or contemporary city due to its prominent location and physical characteristics. So for its prominent location, it's on the corner directly across from the park. It's centered on the lot, a little bit back, but centered on the lot. It's a corner property. It's sited on a rise, so it's a little bit higher up. And so it is a prominent location. It's something that, you know, you can see and a corner property across from Wash Park. For its physical characteristics, a lot of it is the juxtaposition between it as an 1880s house on this really large lot, in, you know, comparison to the more redeveloped properties along the blocks, which are really large houses on much smaller lots. And so this is 3 different lots, and so this is a very large parcel. And so it's sort of that physical characteristic that's distinct from what is around it, particularly with its large front-facing gable and the wraparound porch. And so staff concurs that it is an established and familiar feature of the neighborhood due to its prominent location and its physical characteristics. And then finally, that it promotes an understanding and appreciation of the urban environment by means of distinctive physical characteristics or rarity. So this is a pretty rare resource for the neighborhood and for the Wash Park area. On its block, less than half of them are older than 1940 on sort of the block that's facing it. It is believed to be the oldest building facing Washington Park. And it is one of only 6 that are older than 1884 in the zip code. So it's a pretty rare resource, not something that you're seeing. There's a lot of redevelopment in the area, and have a house of this age and this character. Staff finds that it's a rare resource for the neighborhood. And again, its physical distinction, given its age, its architectural style, it's on the raised site on an oversized lot, and it helps to provide an understanding of how the urban environment has changed over time. From the early agrarian use, there was ranching at here for a while, then sort of the early development of the neighborhood, and then the larger evolution of the neighborhood over time, as is seen on the changes of the house. And so staff concurred and found that it met criteria. And then I want to talk a little bit about integrity. I know there was a lot of information in their packet about integrity, so I wanted to talk a little bit about what integrity means and then how it is related to this property. So integrity, there are 7 aspects or qualities of integrity. There's the location and the setting, the feeling and association, and the design, materials, and workmanship. So there's 7 qualities. I kind of group them in these as they somewhat go together. It encompasses all areas of significance. So it reflects all of the criteria and the full range of the period of significance, which is from the 1880s to 1973. And this is an assessment of its historic integrity. It is not an evaluation of its structural integrity. So integrity works together. And so you don't have to have all 7, but you have to have the important parts of the integrity to help convey the history and the significance of the property. So a property can be in really poor condition and still convey its significance and thus retain its integrity. And then conversely, a property can be in really good condition, but have been changed so much that it has lost its integrity. So wanting to separate condition and integrity. Integrity is to talk about, in this instance, is to talk about does it meet those 7 aspects of integrity. And so a lot of times when we give pre-application meetings before people are thinking about doing a designation, and to help explain that, those 7 aspects, it's complicated. So we tell them, would prior residents recognize the property today? That's a little bit of a colloquial way of thinking about integrity. It's not quite as specific as those 7, but that's what we kind of do when we talk to people who are interested in designation is, would the prior resident recognize the property today? We take a little more analytical look, but that's a good way for people to understand that. Next slide. So the integrity of this property. So there have been minimal changes outside the period of significance, which goes to 1973 when Judge Burnett died really early in his life. So there's stucco and additions that have been added to the property that have accrued their own significance. I'm showing you this top image so that you can see this is the rear addition at the back of the property. So it is an addition that happened within the period of significance. And even if it didn't happen within the period of significance, is likely something, if it was designated, that would have been approved. It comes back off of the back of the gable. So both of those, so the additions, there's a side addition, a rear addition, those were within the period of significance. There have been window replacements throughout most of the house. For the most part, the window openings retained their historic size and operation. However, the front window has been altered pretty significantly and enlarged. You can see it on the bottom photo there. So that has been changed. But overall, staff found that it maintains all aspects of integrity. It is still in the same original location, so it maintains integrity of location. The setting is still retained, even though there has been a large-scale redevelopment in the neighborhood. Overall, it's still residential in neighborhood. It's still located directly across the street from the park. It still maintains that same setting that you had from, it's altered from the 1880s, but through 1973, you still have much of that same setting of a residential neighborhood directly across from the park. Within the design of it, we felt that the design of the Queen Anne Free Classic variant is still evident. You still have this deeply pitched roof, the decorative window surrounds, the full width porch with the classical elements. The stucco does cover some of the variation, but you can still see the variations in wall plane. And so we feel that even with the stucco that was added after the original design of the house, that it still maintained the visible characteristics of the Queen Anne style. The materials and workmanship, they reflect change over time. So you're seeing stucco and the additions and the changes to it. Those changes occurred within the period of significance. And so we found that it had met the criteria for materials and workmanship. And then for feeling and association, it remains in a residential neighborhood. Until recently, it was in use as a residence. You still get that same feeling and association of a house that was sited on a large corner lot across from the park. And so you still get that feeling and association with the property. So Landmark staff found that it did meet the requirements of historic integrity. And then per the Denver Revised Municipal Code, you guys are also to look at the historic context and then the period of significance. So as is appropriate for a property, the historic context is related to the 4 areas of significance. The historic context provides background on the development of the Wash Park neighborhood, how it's intricately linked to both water and transportation, and how the neighborhood in the area grew up around it at the same time that you were getting water to the area and transportation, the development of Wash Park, and then provides information on the owners and residents of the property. There are a variety of owners that are noted within the historic context as just sort of part of the history, but it's only being brought forward under the criterion B for who had significance. Staff only finds that it's Burnett and the women who were associated with the property, although others were noted throughout the historic context. So the period of significance is recommended in the application is said 1880 to 1973. Staff is recommending circa 1884 to 1973 as that the date of the building is dated to circa 1884. And so per preservation policy, the period of significance should not predate the building that's on the property. And so we are recommending that the period of significance be slightly altered to circa 1884. And then it still extends through 1973, which is at the death of Judge Burnett. And then I know you guys, you've got initial public comments that were sent to you in the packet, as well as the owner's comments, and then you've gotten a couple of other batches of emails over the course of the last week. So overall, we received 55 emails or letters of support from 55 individuals. We received 100 from individuals who were opposed. Then we also received a petition from the owners with 121 signatures that are opposed to the designation. And then within the letters, we also had 2 additional letters from registered neighborhood organizations in support, but not for the neighborhood. The RNO for East Wash Park did not submit a letter. They were from registered neighborhood organizations that were not for the East Wash Park. You received the owner's comments. There was a variety of exhibits, as well as a personal statement, and then a letter from the owner's attorney. So that was all sent to you as well. And then you received an email on some information about police reports that was emailed to you in one of the batches with the community comments. Slide, please. So Landmark staff found that the application demonstrates that it meets the criteria. It is over 30 years of age. We concurred that it meets at least 3, that it met B, C, F, and G. We found that it retained integrity. We're asking you to consider the historic context. And so we as staff are recommending that the application be forwarded to Denver City Council for their review. There is a suggested motion here at the bottom, as well as one on this next slide. Our attorneys have asked that we slightly tweak the motion that I had put in your staff report, so the language is just slightly different. On the first slide here, it talks about just accepting what is in the staff report, or then if you want to more tailor any of your comments, there is this one to help you with that, and that is handed out as well. If you decide to recommend otherwise, you would have to write that up yourself, so think about that. So I am happy to answer any questions that you might have now or later.
Questions, Lars?
The 55 support versus 100 opposed. How are those collected? What's the
So
detail on that?
yeah, so they came to me in kind of a couple of different ways. For the most part, they were just emailed either directly to me or to the Landmark inbox. So we just have landmark@denvergov.org. So they're emailed to me either that way or through, so it was, most of them were emailed to me. There were a few letters that were emailed to me. There were a few things, there were a couple that were sent to me from the owner or the owner's representation that were emailed to me as well.
And then opposed, just to be clear, opposed is opposed to designation or opposed to demolition?
Opposed to designation, sorry, I want to be clear on that. Yes, it was 50 some in support and 100 opposed to the designation.
I also wanted to clarify, as far as the petition goes opposing designation, that number isn't there. I saw quite a few same names that we received letters from folks who then signed the petition. That hasn't been compared.
I did not compare them. They just, there was 121, I think, that signed the petition. There was some overlap between who signed the petition and who signed the letters. Yes.
Question, I guess, about the history, the very early history of it, and this might also be a question for the applicants. So this house, as I'm understanding it from reading the report, was constructed after there had been an original house on that same site, right? So that's not whatever was built in or whatever was listed for sale in 1883. This was built after this had been platted and was kind of, intended for essentially suburban use, not as like a farm house.
Yes, that is what the application is putting forth, and we as Landmark staff, we go through when we're reviewing an application. We there's research in this case that we've already done because we posted it twice. So there's some research we already have, and then there's research that we go in and do research to check that the application has some basic facts that are accurate. So we go in and do that sort of research. So we went and looked and pulled maps and that kind of thing, and that was based on what we were finding that as what we understood it as well, is that there was another house built somewhere on the block, maybe in the same location. It was a much smaller house, and then it looks like in 1884, that's when this house was built.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Kara. You want me to read it? Sure. Okay, so again, I'll go over the public hearing process. First, we will hear from, or we'll have the designation application presentation given. So if you are part of the applicant team, you may speak during the applicant presentation, but not during public comment, the public comment portion of the public hearing. And again, you have up to that 10 minutes altogether as part of that. Similarly, for the owner, we will have an owner presentation. If you are part of the owner team, you may speak during that owner presentation time of up to 10 minutes altogether, but not during the public comment period of the public hearing. And then lastly, we will have the public comments after these presentations from the applicants and owners. I will call for that public comment, and public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker at that time. So I think we are ready to hear from the applicants. If you'd like to join us at the table, please. And for all of you, whether it's you're like to give a public comment or you're part of the team of the applicant or owners, we ask that you give your name and address. We're beginning.
Mr. Wilk. I don't think you can unplug it, but if you need to plug in, you can. And if you need to pull it closer.
Counselors.
We start whenever? When you're
Yes.
ready.
And
Okay, my name is Megan Davis. I am one of the people who helped prepare the application for 800 South Franklin Street. My address is 1018 South Columbine Street in Denver, Colorado. My family came to Colorado in 1897, which was just 13 years after this house was built in 1884, and I grew up in the area. For me, part of understanding my own family's story is understanding how Denver has evolved. But why do I care about this house? Why should we care about this house? This house is one of the last physical links to the very beginning of Washington Park. Built before the park itself, it is the oldest house facing the park on any side. Out of more than 8,000 homes in the 80209 zip code, Denver property records show that only 6 are known to have been built in or before 1884. This house is one of them. This house is unique. It has been a prominent, familiar feature for generations of people who have walked, run, biked, swimmed, and lived in this neighborhood, including me. But it's not just that it's old. This house tells Denver's story. It tells our story. Preserving this house preserves our ability to understand ourselves and how the place we know has come to be. More people visit historic sites than read history books. It's easier to understand the story of Denver's growth standing in front of a farmhouse like this one than it is by reading a plaque. The property was first tied to German-American pioneers Julius Bartels and Charles Boehm, whose work transformed South Denver from prairie and farmland to suburbs and Denver into a modern city of the West. Reverend William Bradley, who completed the current structure in 1884, helped to incorporate the town of South Denver into the city of Denver and left a lasting philanthropic legacy in support of equitable education. In the 1960s, Judge William Burnett lived here with his wife and 4 kids while shaping reforms to probation, work release, and reconnaissance bonds that still influence courts nationwide. This house has also played an integral role in establishing the economic independence of women widowers who not only lived here but used the house as a means to support themselves and their families in a time when women in Denver faced many barriers which prevented them from being primary earners. This house tells us that Wash Park was once farmland irrigated by immigrant families, that Denver's civic and cultural life was built by people who lived not just downtown but on these edges, that judges, ministers, pioneers, and immigrants all left their mark here starting as early as the time of Denver's founding. Without this house, it would be easy to believe that nothing and no one was here until the neighborhood's characteristic bungalows went up in the interwar era, but nothing could be farther from the truth. As you know, in order to be a Denver landmark, a structure must meet at least 3 of 10 criteria, and this house qualifies under 4. First, under criterion F, as an established and familiar feature. This house sits directly across from Washington Park on the double corner lot with an unusually deep setback. Neighbors have come to know it as a defining feature of the rapidly changing East Wash Park landscape. And its farmhouse-like cues, its rise above the street, and its visibility from the park have long made it part of the daily experience of the neighborhood. Second, it qualifies under criterion G, rarity and ability to promote understanding. As I mentioned, this is one of a handful of homes in the zip code built in 1884 or earlier. Fewer than half of the homes on its block were built before 1940. In a quickly developing urban context, this house is one of the very few that can still tell the story of East Wash Park's early beginnings. It stands out. Its siding, its scale, and its age make it far more effective at teaching us about the neighborhood's roots than later infill homes ever could. Third, it qualifies under criterion B for association with significant persons. I spoke to this earlier, but I'll reiterate that the occupants of this home over time connect this property to major chapters in Denver's history and whose influence extends well beyond this walk. In particular, while residing at this home, Judge William Burnett served as presiding judge of the Denver Municipal Court and developed a widely imitated release program for people with alcoholism, for which he gained national recognition as a legal reformer. This is just one of Judge Burnett's many civic projects that shaped the city that we know today. Fourth and finally, it qualifies under criterion C for its distinctive architecture. Despite later alterations, which we heard about from Kara, 800 South Franklin is a well-preserved Queen Anne free classic farmhouse. Its dominant style is reflected in the asymmetrical massing, the steep roof lines, and the wraparound porch with classical Doric columns and detailing that define the style. While Queen Anne examples are broadly found across Denver, in East Wash Park, the scale, detailing, and intact composition of this 1884 example make it distinctive locally. It's also worth noting that while many other examples of Queen Anne architecture in Denver are highly decorative, this house is an example of a simpler permutation, a symbolic reflection of the area's temperance roots, which emphasize modesty and restraint. The landmark ordinance was written for exactly this reason, to protect the few resources that remain to illustrate our sweep of history. It recognizes that private property rights matter, but they must be balanced with the rights of the community to safeguard our shared heritage. If Denver decides that individual profit always outweighs community benefit, then what are we saying about our values? That one developer's desire to maximize a return is more important than the collective right of this neighborhood to keep its roots visible and its character intact. Preservation is not about stopping change. It is about balancing change with continuity. Ordinances like this protect the mix of eras that make a neighborhood feel authentic rather than generic. They educate future generations by showing them who built this city and how it grew. And they contribute to long-term economic and cultural value. In this case, we're not asking to freeze this house in time, but rather to preserve the markers of our shared history within the context of the modern neighborhood that we love and call home. This house sits on its original foundation, and the primary elements of design, materials, workmanship, and setting remain intact. We've also heard from a historic preservation architect, that it is in better condition than most houses he's worked on. In other words, it is restorable and it communicates its character clearly. I'll also note the neighbors raised nearly $1,000 in under 24 hours to cover the application fee, and dozens of comments have been submitted in support. This response shows how much the property matters to the people who live here. If we lose this house, we don't just lose one building. We lose the oldest surviving home on Washington Park. We lose the ability to tell the story of East Wash Park's pioneer beginnings in a tangible way, and we lose an opportunity to demonstrate that Denver values more than just profit, that we value the places that connect us to our past, and we want to create some continuity for the generations to come. What is this ordinance for if not retaining structures like this one? 800 South Franklin meets and exceeds the criteria for landmark designation, and if we don't protect the South Franklin house, no other home stands a chance.
Hello, my name is Jody Debs, and I'm a 21-year resident of Washington Park, and I signed a landmark application. 800 South Franklin Street is one of the 6 oldest buildings in Washington Park, and the only one bordering the park which it predates. It is 141 years old and built less than 2 decades after the Civil War. It was constructed only 8 years after Colorado became a state. 800 South Franklin meets 4 of the landmark criteria, including architecture, history, and rarity. It absolutely merits historic designation, and if not this building, then what? building qualifies. In the past 10 years, Washington Park and the city have undergone an adverse transformation as many historic, structurally sound, and more affordable homes have been scraped and landfilled. Under the ordinance, approximately 98% of demolition permits are issued without review. An even smaller number satisfy the landmark criteria, with only a handful going to this commission each year. In 58 years, only 3 owner-opposed landmark designations have been granted. The balance between historic preservation and development and vision of the landmark preservation ordinance have not been realized. I urge the commission to follow the ordinance and the staff recommendation and to protect 800 South Franklin from demolition before it too disappears forever.
My name is Stephanie Jacobs. I'm a 3rd or maybe 4th generation Denverite, and I lived in Wash Park for nearly 30 years. My address is 686 South High Street, and I signed the application. You've read our application, which thoroughly details the multiple ways in which 800 South Franklin qualifies for landmark status, and you've just heard from Megan and Jody, so I'll be quick. I do want to let you know that our 3rd application signee, Susan, was not able to join us today due to medical reasons, but she is here in spirit. So, in addition to the written support provided leading up to today's meeting, I wanted to share a few statements from people who requested to remain anonymous. It's a living historic building that should be preserved in its entirety to tell the story. History is so valuable, it's how we learn. It's a truly unique property that provides a sense of being in the country like the park used to be. Its proximity to the park makes it even more special. It's such a cool house and there is nothing like it anywhere by the park. I would like to see it saved. For all of these reasons, I urge you to vote in favor of landmark designation for 800 South Franklin Street.
Good afternoon. My name is Jay Homestead, Senior Director of Preservation Advocacy for Historic Denver. We ask that you consider the community's application to designate the Burnett House at 800 South Franklin Street as a Denver landmark. With only a minute left here to speak, I should just say we've acted in an advisory capacity for the community members, and the task before you today is to determine whether or not this home is eligible and to recommend it forward to City Council to make the decision as to whether or not this becomes a landmark. I think you've heard from the community, you've heard from the staff. It meets 4 out of 10 criteria. All you need is 3. And so just something to keep in mind, demolition is forever. And we really hope that you at least recommend this house forward to City Council for approval. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicants? All right, thank you very much. And the final team. Just a friendly reminder, if you would please give your name and address.
Just let me know when you'd like to change the slides.
Tony Kohaki, my address is 786 South Gilpin Street. Again, this is my wife, Robin Kohaki. We're the owners of 800 South Franklin Street. We are opposed to this landmark designation application. We know this presentation is about criteria, but we did want to give just a bit of background on us and our family. So we live in Wash Park currently. We've been there for 12 years. We've lived in Denver for 20 years. So we have 4 kids, 3 that go to the local elementary school, Steele. I'm an engineer and I work in procurement currently, and Robin stays home with our kids. Next slide. Here's a brief snapshot of our timeline. So we purchased this property.
Sorry, if you want to just pause for a second. Okay,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah, we purchased this property in February. Unfortunately, we weren't aware of this landmark process existed, and nothing was disclosed to us in that real estate transaction about the past. So we did mediation most of the summer. Unfortunately, we weren't able to reach agreement on an MOU. So we decided to list the property for sale for a break-even cost for us, and I'll talk about that more. Next slide. We did want to highlight the property was for sale for almost 2 years before we bought it. There was no preservation buyer and no one willing to purchase this house for market value in that time period. Next slide. So we put the house on the market August 28th, and we did pre-market it to a group of developers in July 31st. So that's the history on that. Next slide. We did want to highlight this is not in a historic district, and the neighborhood of Wash Park does not support hostile designations. Next slide. We also wanted to highlight, so we have a broad support map. So we did a GPS pen for all of our support letters. So you can see right there is the map of them all across Denver, and it's pretty broad. And then we have a high concentration in the Wash Park area. So you can see, and I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. I'll show it in more detail. You can see that the house is the red dot there, and we have a high concentration of support in the area. And what we wanted to highlight, so obviously you have the count of letters. I wanted to highlight ours are handwritten letters from neighbors and from these specific people living in these houses. We'd encourage you to read through those. They give a lot of context on the reality of the situation, like their thoughts on, you know, looking at this house every day, what they think about it, and they have a lot of feelings, and a lot of it predates us and you know our interaction with this house. We would like to highlight a lot of the letters for designation are really canned letters who don't seem to understand our situation and the impact on our family. And they don't look at this house every day and kind of see the shape it's in and the situation it's created in the neighborhood. And so unfortunately, we didn't meet the cutoff of 12 p.m. yesterday, but yesterday we did get a support letter from St. John's Elementary School at 1 p.m. I forwarded it on. I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but they are in our support as well. And we thought that was very telling of, you know, the real situation that's going on in the neighborhood with this house. They're directly across the street from it, and you know they've had to deal with the ramifications as well. Next slide. And one thing we wanted to highlight, really the perspective of the neighborhood comes into criteria F and G, and it is really what F and G is all about. So that's why we want to talk a lot about our support, what the neighborhood actually thinks about this property. So I did pull, you know, just some excerpts from some of the letters, and you can kind of see, you know, just some highlights of what people think in the neighborhood. We heard a lot of, you know, that's an eyesore, you know, we're tired of looking at it. A lot of people talk about, you know, all the character's been removed from this house. It doesn't exist anymore. And some neighbors talk about the hazards that the house has created in the neighborhood, being vacant for the last, you know, several years and what that's caused. And anyways, we just encourage you to think about that context of those two criteria because it really is the perspective of the neighborhood. Next slide. We also want to highlight, we did have a support letter from a DU law professor of 17 years that specializes in property and land use. And she supports us as well. I'd encourage you to read that letter. Next slide. Additionally, one of the previous owners who lived in the house for approximately 20 years, he is on the call and he will talk about his experience with the property. So I'll let him do that. But what I wanted to highlight is his family did all the additions and extensions onto the house. He also did the window modifications, and he has information that conflicts with the application and the staff report. So we'd like you to hear his thoughts on the house. And he also has some experience with the foundation issues of this property. Next slide. Just to talk about our financials in the house. So currently we purchased the house for $2.625 million. And currently we've invested over $2.85 million in the property. And if we continue and sell the property, you know, in November, say if we go to city council, we'll have invested 3.1 through that sale process. We did have one expression of interest in the property during marketing for mentioning 1.5 million, but an offer never materialized. As it sits today, we can only assume we'll possibly lose millions of dollars if this property is designated. Next slide. Additionally, we wanted to highlight, so we did get two bids on renovation after going into this process. Both came in at approximately 1.35 million, which just really means that to get this property inhabitable, you're going to have to spend 1.35 million on that. I wanted to highlight we would not be able to qualify for that loan due to the property value, so that will not be possible for our family. Next slide. And now we want to get into the condition of the house, and we understand the context of integrity, structural integrity versus the integrity of history, but we'll try to link those at the end of it. We wanted to highlight that the foundation, you can see there, it's essentially cracking and crumbling. So we had an inspection done, and these are the pictures from that. But you can see it's literally disintegrating beneath the house. You can see it cracking and the brick falling apart. And then you'll see areas where the foundation has fallen in on itself. The inspector told us this is the worst property he's ever inspected in his career. He said part of the house sits just on dirt, there's no foundation. Part of it sits on this foundation that's crumbling. There isn't a crawl space, so the mold is growing up from the ground and into the basement of the house. And additionally, Stephen could talk about it, but his family attempted to do some patching on this foundation, but it continues to degrade, as you can see here. Next slide. Additionally, wanted to highlight all the house systems are really end of life: electrical, HVAC, plumbing, the roof, all the mechanical systems. You can see the flooring. The flooring's in very poor condition. The chimney is falling. The mortar's disintegrating, needs to be replaced. So everything is end of life. Additionally, next slide. Wanted to highlight there's mold growing throughout the house. You can see the roof there where the mold is growing on old rafters. The water has infiltrated on the chimney all into the walls in this first and second story. And then in the basement, you can see the mold growing on the beams. Next slide. So we did have follow-up mold testing done, and they said right now it's 15 times the inhabitable level, so it's not safe to occupy currently. You can see that's a picture on the second floor of mold growing on the floor just from the ambient air. So really our core point here is this house, everything's gonna need to be ripped out of this house. So really our question is what historical integrity is gonna be left after you have to rip out, take off the roof, rip out the flooring, rip out the walls. And then if the foundation's degrading like this, what does the brick look like underneath that stucco? And the outside, siding's falling off as well. Like what is gonna be left of this property after all of that? That's worth estimating. Go ahead.
And it looks like we have just a brief amount of time. I'm gonna try to touch on first criteria B, which the application references Judge Burnett. We heard about him and his time as a judge, and then also the women who are acknowledgeably rarely recognized as they should be over a period of time. But a landmark designation is not a time to recognize somebody. It is an opportunity to find a structure of a recognized person. And so I would submit that the staff in the application has that backwards. This is designating a structure because it's supposed to have or tell a story, as this commission has said before, tell a story about the person who is already recognized that lives there. And I don't think that we have that here. Tony and Robin have offered to put a plaque acknowledging the prior residents there, acknowledging Judge Burnett. He has been acknowledged in the area in which he did his work. There is an award that relates to him that is now given in his name. And I think that that is the right avenue to recognize him. This structure, he did not build anything on it. He did not add anything to it. He did happen to live there for a period of time. But this structure itself and what the staff is and the applicant is asking you to do is to preserve a structure that does not have a tie or tell a story about the great work that he did as a judge. And as far as the women who worked there, yes, they deserve to be recognized, but the avenue to do that is not to maintain a structure that a few of them lived at for a period of time. So our interpretation of the code here is that standard does not apply. The structure itself needs to be significant. And I will just ask for additional time. We had about 40 minutes from staff going through the criteria. And so I would ask for just 3 or 5 more minutes. We heard from the applicants for an extended period of time and it's been about 40 minutes.
So actually this request was given to us ahead of time and but the applicant did not have the same amount of time to prepare their own comments for that same amount of time. So we respectfully declined the request since we can't give equitable time to both parties. So we'll unfortunately need to cut you short. Could I please ask you to give your name and address?
Sure, I'm Sarah Kellner and my address is 3400 Walnut Street, Denver, Colorado. And I will just ask for you to please just advance just so that we can get this evidence in the record because this is millions of dollars.
So we do have your the owner comment and the letter that you wrote as part of that, and we've all read that. So hopefully that covers what you needed to cover as well.
I'm just gonna put a picture up of the visibility because a lot of the pictures shown of the property are not accurate. So if you
I
are
can show
interested in
2 more
seeing that,
slides since they are regarding the visibility.
So what was this is the
We don't have
visibility.
additional time.
Yeah, so we see what street views here. Okay. All right, thank you very much. I'm sorry, I should ask commissioners if they have any questions for you. So commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicants? All right.
I have a question. Was the mold that's present now present when you purchased? the property?
We didn't have an inspection on the property because we had no plans to
You
keep
went
it.
through it.
Yeah, but so we had the inspection after the fact and all the mold's been there for years, we're told by the inspectors. It's grown to sizable levels over the years. The leak's been going on for years and years in the roof. It's just coming in around the chimney and just like draining into the house essentially. So it's a long term.
The reason I think we weren't concerned about the condition, like you said, is we just were planning on building our family home, so we figured it was very old, it wasn't gonna be in great condition.
Yeah, for reference, this house sits in the backyard where we built the house, you know, so that's why it just doesn't not work.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
And then just one staff clarity, when that owner was speaking of support, that is support of not designating the property, just for clarity in this process.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so now we're ready to ask for any public comments. So again, I'll go over this process. If you're joining us virtually, we ask that you click the hand raise button in Zoom, or you can dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand if you're joining by phone. Please email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number if you're having trouble with either of these hand raise options. When you are called upon to speak, we ask that you please provide your name. And since this is a designation hearing, we also need you to provide your address. We'd like you to clearly state your position on the proposal before the commission, and you have up to 3 minutes to provide your comment in total. Comments and questions should not be directed to the applicant. So again, I'm assuming we have a number of folks here in person and those of you joining online. So we'll begin with asking people here in person if you'd like to speak. You will need to come up to the table. So it might be the most convenient for all if you would line up along the chairs here at the wall. And then each time it's your turn to speak, we'll have you come to the table and begin with your name and address. And then once that's done with folks here in person, we'll move on to those joining virtually. So if you'd like to make a comment, please line up and I'll call upon you one by one. And again, just a friendly reminder that with your time limit of 3 minutes, I'll politely interrupt you if you've reached that time and just ask you to stop at that point. So thank you. You ready? Okay, all right, if you please join us.
Good afternoon, my name's Patty Henderson. My family lives in East Wash Park at 672 South Gilpin Street. I also own a property at 764 South Gilpin Street, which are both within 2 blocks of this property that's being discussed here today. I've lived in the Wash Park neighborhood for nearly 30 years, and I absolutely love where I live, and I'm passionate about this neighborhood and community. I'm here today to speak out against landmark designation for the property at 800 South Franklin for many reasons. I believe this landmark designation infringes on the property owner's rights. I'm extremely disappointed in a landmarking process that can throw families and neighbors into financial and emotional distress when applicants have nothing to lose and no skin in the game. I've watched as this home has sat vacant for years, going on and off the market with absolutely no buyers. Anyone with the financial means and interest to purchase and restore this particular home had the ability to do so, yet nobody ever stepped forward. The home at 800 South Franklin is in an extensive state of disrepair it's uninhabitable, and it's an eyesore to our neighborhood. The home's been inhabited by squatters, one of which being a convicted felon, and it poses an extreme danger to our community. Young children play on the playground and fields next door at the St. John's Lutheran School. Children and families gather across the street at Wash Park and the Community Rec Center. It's a time where parents are fearful for the safety of their children. This is not the actions I would have expected my fellow Wash Park community members who filed this application to do. I imagine they'd want a safe community for everyone. While it's been said, this home is rare, that is not accurate. There's still approximately 2,600 homes still standing in Denver built in the 1880s, 5,900 homes built in the 1890s. Many large lots exist around East Wash Park as neighbors have been purchasing adjoining lots and building across them. The lot size is not as rare as the application states, nor is the position of the home that holds directly across from the park. New large homes line the streets on all sides of Wash Park, and this is not a rarity. This Queen Anne house and physical attributes, while popular in its era, is not recognizable and does not reflect the look and feel of Wash Park today. Its structure, design, characteristics, and location on the property is outdated, and it would benefit the neighborhood to have it replaced with a new home that structurally sound, safe, and more accurately reflects Wash Park's current homes. Lastly, while it's nice to wish to honor the history of a notable Denver judge who previously resided in this residence, the home's history is not quite the pretty picture being painted by the applicants.
I will have to interrupt you there. We've reached your times. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm gonna stand. I'm Caitlin Royston. I live at 772 South William Street. I'm one block from 800 South Franklin. I'm vehemently opposed to this landmark designation. I'm the mother of 3 young children who walk past this house every single day. And I'm here in person because I'm concerned enough that I want to speak to all of you directly. Despite 121 of 190 pages of public comments opposing landmarking this property, written with genuine care and concern by neighbors like myself and Patty, the subcommittee has disregarded the community it's supposed to represent to push forward a reckless designation. Even the principal of St. John's, the school directly across the street, which the subcommittee has failed to note is directly across the street from this property, submitted a letter of opposition yesterday. However, it was excluded. It was received 1 hour too late. That kind of rigid technicality, especially when the safety of school children are at stake, is exactly the kind of bias driving this process. This commission's role is to preserve, enhance, and perpetuate structures of cultural significance. But preservation also requires maintenance, funding, and accountability. This application doesn't even meet your own criteria. The applicants chose criteria B, C, F, and G. B, association with a person. The judge that lived here only lived here for 10 years. And since Kara highlighted Catherine Ensley, I'll also note she was married to a KKK member who also lived in this home. That's public record online. It's also active in discussion forums. So this is something you guys should be focused on. C, architecture. The home has been heavily altered, stucco, an addition, window changes. There are no original features on the interior. Integrity is lost. F, neighborhood feature. This house is not a source of pride. It's vacant, unsafe, and across from a school. It is a blight on the neighborhood, not an identity. G, distinctiveness. Denver has stronger intact Queen Anne examples. Intent matters too. In a newspaper article, the lead applicant said she was, quote, sick of seeing properties systemically scraped in her neighborhood. That's not historic justification. This is a personal grievance. And to make that fact pattern worse, she doesn't even live near this house. I live a block away from it. The applicants won't pay for upkeep or safety. They get a symbolic win while the homeowners in the neighborhood are left with the liability. This isn't preservation, this is reckless. This is a credibility defining moment for this commission. Do you represent the community you are supposed to serve, or are you going to advance the grievances of 3 applicants that do not speak for this community with no stake in this home at the expense of taxpayers? And we must talk about history in full. This house was once the home of a KKK member. When raised, it's important that the record reflects this.
Thank you very much. Your time is up.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm just gonna say, Kara Han said that the committee only tries to focus on the positive. You don't get to rewrite history this way.
My name is Garth Ledbetter. I live in Wash Park for about 30 years. I live at 686 South High Street. I have walked by this property in its glory days. I have seen the neglect progress to where the property is now. As a lover of the arts and crafts style and the bungalow and that generation, I appreciate even a simple Queen Anne, because it was an influence on William Morris, who was one of the drivers of the eventual craftsman movement, which was a small d democratic movement under people like Stickley and the Roycrofters. Our goal in that subdivision was to allow the children of judges and the children of teamsters play together, live together, because they could afford a home. We have seen systematic destruction of that goal, and the ideals that simple Queen Anne style and that were reflected in the values of the judge be slowly erased. We erase our history. We erase it in such a way that it shall be repeated again. Yes, people say a KKK member lived there.
That's public record.
Yes,
Please don't interrupt.
and you would find that that was probably the case in many of the homes throughout Denver. Denver was a hotbed for that. The house is neglected. The house probably has suffered from that neglect. But to raise the house erases permanently part of the tradition of the neighborhood. It could be saved. It could be something glorious. It could help tell the story of not only Denver, but of Wash Park East and the park itself. It has been there for a long time. It deserves to remain. I will yield my time.
Very much. Right, next, please.
Oh, my name is Earl Holden. I live at 5366 World County Road in Longmont. I did the actual mold testing on the house, so I had some things I wanted to share with you I thought were important beyond what Tony mentioned earlier. So there are two types of maintenance issues or two types of mold issues in a house. There are maintenance issues, those related to mold under a bathroom or mold under a sink or under a window, which usually can be taken care of pretty easily. But what I found in this home was that there are some critical issues related to the attic, chimney area and the additions, and then also issues in the crawl space in the basement, primarily related to soil in contact with the foundation, which is a more serious issue, much harder to basically correct, which would be sort of an ongoing problem for the residents. When it's in contact with the ground, the mold that's naturally in the soil jumps onto the wood and begins to grow up through the house. So I wanted to make sure that was maybe laid out a little bit more. I only had 10 minutes, but I thought I'd mention that a little bit more. So my conclusions related with the building is that it's a sick building currently. The mold issues are 15 to 20 times higher in the air than what we consider healthy. And it's currently, I would consider it unsafe to occupy in its current conditions. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gary Kawaki. I am Tony's father, and I believe I'm from Olathe, Kansas, so I've come here 10-hour drive to get here to help my son and my daughter-in-law in this matter. But I'm really, first of all, speaking for Tony and Robin are very upstanding citizens. They've always been law-abiding. They pay their property tax. They do everything by the book. And it's, in my opinion, quite unfair that they've been put in this position, not knowing that this wanted to be a landmark facility before they bought the property. I understand maybe you don't really care about that, but I'm just stating that as they might have done something totally different. They first of all probably went and bought the property. Second of all, I think what maybe you're forgetting is that if you want to save a property in a landmark situation, there needs to be finances to do that. I can assure you, Tony and Robin aren't rich. And they're not gonna, they don't have $2 million to slap into this property, to subsidize it, to make it to your standards, to be able to be commercially feasible to live in this house. That's gonna be done when it's done. I mean, they just don't have the money to do that. So, I mean, their choices are gonna be if they don't get a positive, understanding from this committee or later from the city council, then I think they probably have no choice but to find another way to get out of this matter. So I believe that this property is going to be in the same state it has been in right now, even get worse, because there is no money to put in this property to make it restore it to what you think the standards should be. So it's going to sit there and be a drug house because that's what it's been. And it's going to have animals, coons, raccoons, squirrels, everything else going in that facility. Basically, it's run down. I'm really glad to hear from the people that spoke that this property is way beyond modification. I believe if you wanted to make it a landmark, you should have done that 30 years ago when it was in decent condition. And then maybe it could have been landmarked. So from my point of view, I believe that I'm against making this house a landmark structure. And because I don't think it's in the best interest of Wash Park or the city of Denver, because it's not going to be livable. Nobody's going to buy this property and make it happen. So unfortunately, I think it's economics, which nobody talked about when you make your presentations. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Can we get your address?
Oh, sorry, 26060 West 111th Terrace, Olathe, Kansas, 66061.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Mark Reinhardt of 5013 Montview Boulevard in Denver. Almost 2 years ago, my wife and I sat before this commission asking you to recommend denial of historic designation for our Montview property. Our case, like Franklin, was a hostile attempt by a small and vocal minority to prevent a family from replacing a derelict, abandoned, unsafe property with a vibrant family home. And while the application to preserve Montview is weak, the Franklin application is even weaker. At Montview, the applicants could not establish any meaningful connection between the people associated with the house and notable events that actually took place there. The commission recognized that and denied designation. The same problem exists here. Franklin's application relies on speculation and broad neighborhood history, but it cannot tie this particular house to events or figures of real historic importance. The credibility of Denver's landmark program is strengthened when this commission holds the line on weak owner-opposed cases. You already demonstrated that judgment with Montview, and consistency requires the same outcome here. By reserving designation for properties that truly meet the standards, you preserve public trust in the process and ensure that landmarking continues to focus on protecting Denver's most significant and intact resources. I would ask the commission to take seriously the burden that rests with the applicants. It's not enough to speculate or to string together loose narratives about the broad history of Denver and Wash Park. They have to prove that every one of the criteria is truly met. That standard exists for a reason, because your decision has a major and potentially irreparable impact on families like mine and the Kahagis. Once a property is landmarked against an owner's will, that consequence will last forever. I realize I have about a minute left. Those are my prepared remarks. I'd just like to offer my sympathies having gone through this a couple years ago. I can assure you that the stress is incredibly real. We're not developers looking to flip a home for a profit. We are almost done with construction on our house, and I can tell you now, you will have a beautiful house in a neighborhood with a family living, probably like the folks who built that house intended. So I would respectfully urge you guys to deny the designation of 800 South Franklin Street. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jason Lewiston. I live at 135 Adams. I'm opposed to the designation. I am a developer. I've heard that word tossed around, so not so much kindness, but I've built about 1,000 houses, mostly in southeastern Michigan. I'm here to talk about lead paint in old houses. Pre-1980 houses have multiple layers of lead paint. When I go up to the wall to redo the mechanicals, if I'm ripping off the wall, I'm creating 1,000 trillion particles of lead paint dust that stay in the house and then enter the brains of little children or pregnant women in utero and cause brain damage. There's no mitigation in health science for lead paint dust. I don't know why this committee doesn't consider this daily. It's the biggest danger I have to kids. I wouldn't let these people live in a remodeled house that has 22 layers of lead paint on it that we have to rip apart to put new mechanical systems. It's dangerous for her children. I mean, it's terrible. This committee should now turn permanently to having historical architecture. These people have enough money, they could hire a guy to design a historical home. I've designed historical homes that look like they're old houses, but they're brand new. Let's build a brand new house that has new materials that are safe, and it could be Queen Anne, that's fine. I like Queen Anne, I like historical architecture. You don't have to keep the original stupid structures. This is ridiculous. I implore you to end the entire farce of these historic designations. These are not, this home is not, it has no historical significance. Frankly, it has no architectural significance. But if you want to have architectural guidelines, I urge this entire committee to turn permanently to improving historic architecture and not worry about keeping the actual 2x4 from 1882. Who cares about that? I was friends with the guy at Washington Williamsburg. He was a personal friend of mine. He was head of it. So they didn't keep the actual, that's the most important historical neighborhood in the United States. They didn't have to keep actual walls from the 1890s. They redid the buildings all the time. They made them look like they were old. You could do that. I've designed homes that look historic. It's not that hard. So please stop this. Lead paint is a significant, massive danger to kids. Lead paint dust is, I don't care how much you tell me, I know there's one contractor sitting up there that you're gonna mitigate it. Bull blank, you're not gonna mitigate it. I'm gonna create 1 trillion particles of it. It's gonna be in the ductwork, it's gonna be all over every surface. Kids are gonna breathe it in. You cannot do that. It's dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Blaine Harvey, address is 2618 South Vine Street, Denver. I'm opposed to the designation. This case is really about fairness, whether a private owner can be compelled to shoulder this expensive obligations for a house whose historic integrity is measured on paper, not really in real world safety, cost, or structure. Preservation here ignores feasibility and it shifts private costs for a public preference. The report is explicit about the integrity analysis is not a review of structural condition. I think we've heard here today that this project has numerous challenges to get moving forward, and whether it's economic or structurally or with some remediation process that has to happen. And the building probably isn't sound or safe or really financially feasible to move forward. The staff report outlines that the house's character has been substantially altered, stucco, additions were added, windows were replaced. Those changes are then counted as a part of the historic whole, and that might satisfy the paperwork, but it doesn't make restoration practical for a homeowner. Property rights, I think, are being eroded here as well intentioned, but this is an overreaching program in landmark preservation. Forest designation in this context puts a public desire onto one household, and if the community really wanted a museum piece here, why didn't they buy it when it was for sale for the last 10 years? I think another good point to point out here that I saw was the city's own tally and public remark that was made. There's an overwhelming difference in received comment for support, 55 instances, and opposition with I think 100 letters and then another 121 signed petitions. I know it's outlined as might have a little conflict, but it's a 2-to-1 if you just count the sent in letters. And I think we're all in support of the public here, and that's why you volunteer your time here on this committee, and it can be hard sometimes, but you know, it's your job to make sure that, like what the previous member said, that we don't set a slippery slope precedent here that allows kind of a hostile landmark designation for people that don't live in that community and have to deal with this property on a day-to-day basis. And then I think the criteria for style and generalized style isn't really a unique, compelling case. You know, staff recommended removing the Bohm and Bartel associations for criteria B, acknowledging those claimed ties don't hold. I think staff weakens that core criteria by removing those. And you should question why they've removed it. Is it to fit the box? I just see them grasping for how do we make this property fit within the criteria that we need. They also proposed changing the period of significance to match the actual construction date. Another sign this case needed retroactive adjustment to fit the ordinance for criteria. And architecturally, the report
Thank
concedes.
you very much. I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you.
I'm Scott Holder. I live at 2315 North Williams. I'm president of the City Park West Neighborhood Association, an RNO registered with the city. I'm here today speaking on behalf of the RNO in support of community efforts to finally landmark this house. Your approval today is a technical decision, and as we learned previously when speaking to you regarding the house at Montview, which has been raised earlier, anything outside of the criteria submitted in the application and outlined by landmark staff isn't pertinent. And that includes owner ignorance of the process when they bought the house. Anything beyond that should be held for presentation in front of City Council, and that's an important and much needed next step in this process. This house needs the landmark process as outlined in section 30-1 of the ordinance to play out. As previously noted, this is a strong application, and I've sat in front of you with applications that have been stronger and weaker. But the proposed destruction of this house is another painful example of snipping away at the city's history. Demolition permit by demolition permit. And the erasure, and this erases our unique built residential environment. Community reaction such as ours is understandable, allowed by this ordinance, and is widespread across much of the historic core neighborhoods and needs to be aired in front of our elected officials. Preservation efforts such as this one help preserve parts of our collective history. We recover lost stories about our city, and we highlight a landscape narrative that is under heavy developmental pressure and simply remind everybody to understand and appreciate the legacy of their neighborhood. Not just look at a parcel of land in a very highly desirable zip code and think how much house we can put on it. Therefore, we urge the commission to approve this landmark application so that it will go in front of City Council and we can talk further about some of these other issues raised here today. Thank you.
My name is Tyler Keith. I live at 3116 Juniper Court in Golden, Colorado. I was born and raised in Colorado. I've been here my whole life. Probably I'm over 30 years old, so I'm meeting the requirements apparently. So I'm against the hostile designation of this property. I feel like many of the criteria outlined are very subjective. I feel like we need to set a different standard to designate homes within Denver. I appreciate the historical value of the Molly Brown House, the houses that have true historic history and ties to pertinent people or events, things that have happened within Denver. But this property, I think the only reason why we're talking about it is because it's in East Wash Park. If it was in Globeville, I don't think we'd be sitting here. What we're trying to build
for Tony. And Robin is a house that's efficient, up to code, up to standards, fits the neighborhood, and they can raise their family there. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here in person who would like to make a comment? Right, I think we're ready to ask anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment. And please raise your hand through Zoom and we'll call upon you one by one. And as a reminder, if you please begin with your name and address. We'd like you to clearly state your position. And then if you would just remember the time limit and I will politely cut you off if you reach that time limit. I think the first person is Laura. We'll ask you to join as a panelist. Once that goes through and you're ready, you're welcome to begin speaking. Are you there, Laura?
You should be able to unmute, and if you would like to turn on your camera.
Hi.
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay, great. My name is Laura DiMatteo. I live right behind this house and I have been there for over 16 years. My address is 835 South Gilpin Street. And I'd like to echo all the things that the people have said in direct opposition to the landmark designation for a variety of reasons. But as somebody said, I feel so strong about this opposition and I came in person. I am a physician seeing patients right now and I stepped out of a patient room. That's how strong I feel about making sure that the board hears this. I walk by this corner all the time, 10 times a day. I drive by it, I walk by it. I raised 4 children in this neighborhood and I appreciate the passion that everybody has had today, especially for trying to maintain the historic property, but it's academic. It's not practical. There is no human on the planet that can afford to buy this house and maintain the historic designation that is being asked to maintain and live in it. So really strongly opposed to this designation, and because it has been vacant for several years, there's been a squatter roaming in our alley that we've seen in the morning, picking out our trash, and that's only going to get worse. So if we don't do something to help this family demolish this property and put up a house that they can live in, no one's going to buy it. It will get into even more disrepair than it is, and the block of that neighborhood will become even more unsafe. And so please pause, put your academic hat off and think practically about this neighborhood. Let them build the house that they want or pay them $3 million so that the Historic Society can have it. I think they're the 2 choices that practically could be applied here.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we next have Michelle. Once you've gotten the invitation to join us, you can unmute yourself and begin when you're ready.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm Michelle Waluda and I live at 876 South Gaylord Street, and I've been a member of the Wash Park community for about 15 years. I also oppose the landmark designation. I have 3 young children and I've been a member of the St. John's community for a little over 6 years. And that's the school that we all saw on the map in the beginning of the presentation. And it's right across the street from the house we're discussing today. I think it's about 50 feet away. This hearing's been really helpful for me, and I believe the experts that the architectural style at one time embodied distinct characteristics of the time it was built. It's also clear that Judge Burnett is an admirable historic jurist, and the widowers provided great economic contributions. I think that I know I've also been moved when I visited a place and I can go somewhere tangible that I've never been able to experience through reading a book. I agree with all of that. But what's unclear to me is who's the patron responsible for the millions to restore and maintain this house? And without commitment of that patronage, this lot, just like lots in a lot of lots in Wash Park, it attracts unauthorized occupants. And we've had a similar vacant lot on Vine Street, right behind Gaylord Street. About twice a year, local authorities are called to remove unauthorized occupants and cut down the overgrown trees and weeds, all at the expense of taxpayers. What concerns me is a recent unauthorized occupant in this property was also a convicted felon. And you may remember I mentioned this property is less than 50 feet away from a school. Unless there's funding to restore and maintain this property that can be confirmed before the vote, I'd really like to ask you to oppose this designation and protect our children from future unauthorized occupants. I mean, it just seems that your gut would tell you this is the right decision. I think I heard someone say that anything outside of the landmark criteria is not pertinent here. And does that include the safety of our children? I'll find it really disheartening if you're willing to put our children at further risk by allowing this property to stay vacant with unauthorized occupants if we have owners that are willing to contribute to our vibrant neighborhood. So that's all I have. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Adam. Adam, it looks like you're with us. You can unmute at any time to begin speaking.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Adam Starr. I live at 5048 East Cherry Creek South Drive. I'm here today in opposition to designation. A quick Google search, you'll find that there are around 30,000 state judges across the United States. I believe something like 400 or so, give or take, are currently in Colorado. I'm just not really quite seeing the whole thing with criteria being property being a homeowner, or I'm sorry, property being the home of a former judge is not exactly a rare situation. Also, if you Google something like influential Colorado judges throughout history, you're not really going to find Judge Burnett in any of those sites. I would like to focus on Judge Burnett if possible. You see, before Mr. Burnett became a judge, he started off as a practicing attorney, and there was one case, Lerner v. Stone, where he showed a real focus on clarity of title, rightful possession, and the fair use of property. Mr. Burnett was a Republican and rather firm defender of individual rights. He more than likely, if he was in this situation, he would have had trouble with the government telling homeowners what they can and cannot do with their own property. Another major concern is that financial burden. He would know that this is not just about fresh paint and patchwork. This house is decrepit condition, infested with mold, foundation cracks, stucco damage. All that requires a massive amount of cash. And then there's that legal liability. Burnett would recognize the risk of being legally required to maintain such an unsafe structure. If it remains uninhabitable, homeowners can obviously be fined or sued. With all that in mind, I'm sorry, I just want to see how much time I have left. There's the fact that the opposition wants to name the structure the Burnett House, if I'm not mistaken. I kind of find that ironic. It reminds me of George Orwell. I've always loved his books. I just want to kind of say this, but like to this day, like his name Orwellian is often used to describe the very like dystopian control he was against. And like the opposition is trying to designate a rundown home and incredible financial burden on a young family as an historical landmark. And then they want to name it after the very judge who would be completely against all of it. So it sort of feels like a slap in the face to Judge Burnett. If you truly want to honor Judge Burnett, let's do it in a way that reflects his belief in fairness, responsibility, and practical justice. Let's contribute to the beautiful community by helping the Kowaki family, not shackling them to an unsafe structure. And with that, I yield back my time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, John, we'll ask you to join us as a panelist. You can unmute John when you're ready.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. My name is John Aragoni. I live at 500 South Gilpin Street. That's about 3.5 blocks from 800 South Gilpin, but also of interest, I grew up, was born and raised at 876 South Franklin Street, where my parents still reside. So I've spent a lot of time on this block, about 39 years by my count at this point. I still walk and drive by the house at 800 South Gilpin Street multiple times per week. And I can tell you at this point, there is nothing historic about it. There never was anything historic about it. And it is disgusting. I'm nervous every time I walk down the alley with my children en route to their grandparents' house because of all the issues that this house has had over the previous years. It is an eyesore as a result of all the unmanaged rentals and the allowance of the vagrants, and anything about this house is long gone. Anything historic is long gone due to this mismanagement. I mentioned in my letter that I actually met a previous tenant that lived in this house about 5 years ago while they were redoing a property in the neighborhood, and they described it as almost unlivable for their young children at the time. Additionally to this, I actually worked with Tony for a number of years at my previous job, so I knew him long before all of this started going down. Tony is an upstanding citizen, a very kind, generous person, and him buying, knocking down, and building this house is a best case scenario for this neighborhood. It's not a developer. This is a family coming in to build a house that is fit for that family. This isn't another Parkside monstrosity that's going to sit vacant with a $5 million price tag for years and years waiting for someone to snap it up. I cannot stress enough how much this house needs to go. It is just a blight on this neighborhood. I am nervous walking by it every single time with my kids because of the issues that it's had. And I couldn't be happier to change the scenario so that when walking by to visit my parents, to visit my children's grandparents, to see Tony out in the front yard, to wave to him, to catch up. This is exactly the type of family we need in this neighborhood, not just another decrepit old house rotting away, welcoming vagrancy right across the street from a school in a neighborhood that is populated by kids and people that want to be safe when they're out and about in their neighborhood. Please, please do not designate this as a historic property. It's just going to drag down the property values. It's going to hurt the entire community. Please, please support the Kowaki family, allow them to build their dream house, and do not let this house remain as the blight that it is on our neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Caroline, we'll ask you to join us. Caroline, put down her hand. Joshua, you are next.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, my name's Joshua Scott, and I live at 2137 Fountain Circle in Erie, Colorado. And Tony and Robin are my in-laws, so we frequently drive down to visit them. And I've driven through Wash Park many times and love the character of the neighborhood. Really love driving by and seeing the houses, the way that they are aligned. It reminds me of just how things used to be. So I appreciate for sure the passion which wants to keep the house as something historic. But in this particular case, I don't think it really is. The house is fairly set back. It's very difficult to see it. Before we knew even that there was something that was for sale, we did not even notice the house prior when coming to visit. We do think that it is much better served if the house was going to be used for Robin and Tony to be able to raise their family. Just as I think any family would want, they would want to have a place that's safe and can have a place that they can also look across and see the beautiful park that it's there. If this is designated as something that's historic, I just don't see how that can happen. Separately, also, my biggest concern is related to having seen the house in the reports for how decrepit it is. There would be a significant loss of authenticity should the house itself have to go undergo any kind of rehabilitation. So it doesn't seem like it would preserve the house in any way. It would seem much better served to be able to use the space for something that can serve the new family and hopefully families to come after them, and provide an opportunity for beautifying this area of the park where everybody can see something that matters. So thank you for your time. I yield back.
Thank you. All right, Mark, you are next. Mark, are you with us? Can unmute when you're ready.
Okay, great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all hearing all this input. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Mark Wilhelm, and I live at 26226 West Kimberly Way in Buckeye, Arizona. And while my home is in Arizona, I spend my summers here in Colorado with my daughter, Robin, her husband, Tony, and their 4 children in Denver, as well as with my daughter, Allison, and her husband, Josh, and their children in Erie. Our ties to Colorado and to this community are strong, long, and personal. I've mowed the lawn at this house before. I've helped Tony install new locks and screw-in windows to try to keep felons from moving in next door to a school. I hold a master's degree in planning, and I've served for 10 years as chairman of a quasi-judicial board of adjustment in Peoria, Arizona, that you all may be familiar with that type of a board. Through that work, I came to appreciate how important it is that land use decisions be guided by transparent, time-bound, and predictable processes. I'm also here as a father and grandfather. I'm very proud of Robin and Tony and the family that they're raising. Their goal is simple and worthy: build a safe, code-compliant dream home at 800 South Franklin that fits the neighborhood and gives the children the space to grow. Denver's Landmark Preservation Ordinance, Chapter 30, the Municipal Code, sets broad purposes such as safeguarding the city's historic and cultural heritage. In Section 30-1, it provides designation criteria. In Section 30-4 and procedures in Section 30-6. But in practice, those criteria lack clear thresholds and timelines, enabling retroactive actions that can penalize good faith owners after lawful purchases, that erodes due process and public trust. So turning to 800 South Franklin, the property has never been formally designated under Section 30-4, nor listed on any public inventory. In 2001, informal efforts stalled redevelopment, but no designation followed and no stabilizing measures were required. Conditions worsened, repeated illegal occupancy, including occupancy by a repeat felon, vandalism, safety hazards, all across from a school in Washington Park. Those outcomes are inconsistent with the public welfare intent of Section 30-1. Robin and Tony purchased this lot for its land value with no pending designation and are now facing late-stage petitions by third parties with minimal to no financial stake. Preservation is vital when considering a resource. It must be viable, distinctive, retain integrity, and when the process offers clear notice and standards. This is not the case here. Here, the designation would function as arbitrary interference, a retroactive, open-ended constraint that would drive costs up. For these reasons, I urge you to deny designation of 800 South Franklin Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. All right, next is Kelly. Kelly, when you Kelly, we're trying to get you to move over. Hopefully that works. Are you there? You can unmute.
Hey everyone, sorry, it spun for a second while I got back in. My name is Kelly Strong. I live at 910 South Euclid Way in Denver, Colorado. I oppose the landmark designation of 800 South Franklin. For context, I live right across University Boulevard in Bonnie Brae and actively support the Preserve Bonnie Brae effort. I live in a home that was built in 1938, and I strongly believe that neighbors should yield to the style and history of a neighborhood. With that said, the applicants and their supporters' efforts in this matter are misplaced, taking out feelings held for developers that you don't agree with on a family aiming to improve the neighborhood and raise a family there is shameful. As others have mentioned, I urge the commission to consider what happens if this home is landmarked. It won't be restored. It will not become a museum. It will sit to rot as it has for years, continuing to attract squatters right next to an elementary school. Those squatters aren't just run-of-the-mill squatters. They are literally felons with open warrants for their arrest at this property. If something terrible were to happen to my children, to any of the children that frequent this area, frankly, that responsibility will rest with that commission. The people pushing this won't pay for the upkeep or safety. They get a symbolic win while the homeowner and neighbors live with liability. And that to me is not preservation, that is reckless. The question before you as a commission isn't, was this house historic? The question is whether or not you saddle a family with an unsafe property that fails your own criteria, or do you allow them to invest and build a safe home and strengthen the neighborhood? I urge you as a mom of 2 young kids to oppose landmarking 800 South Franklin. The subcommittee's role is advisory, and this commission holds the final responsibility. Preservation without responsibility is truly just negligence, and that negligence may have consequences. Thank you. I yield back the rest of my time.
Thank you. All right, Zach. Zach, I think you're with us. You can unmute and begin whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you very much. So my name is Zach Belcher. I live at 468 South Franklin Street, 3.5 blocks just north of this address. I am opposed to the designation as a landmark property. I just want to say I have no knowledge of the owners, and my views are purely based on this process and the methods that we've gone through. My reasons for opposing are, first, I think the conclusions of the staff findings are subjective and they are opinion. There's no significant events that could be traced to this property. There's no historical record of it. It's a property that is not unique in design. And I think the findings of the staff to recommend proceeding with the designation are subjective, and I think they're wrong. The second, the property is in a very poor state. It's empty, it's run down, it's deteriorating, it's not habitable. I walk by it every day. It is an eyesore on the community. Third, forcibly seeking a designation by people who have no financial skin in the game to participate and maintain and pay is just wrong. I realize that there's an ordinance process, but this goes completely against the principles we should have. To repeat, I'm vehemently opposed. I think it's a travesty to this family, what they're going through in this process and the neighbors who are pursuing it. And I think the arbitrary subjective conclusion of the staff findings should be thrown out. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Caroline did want to speak, so
Okay,
I think she's our last one.
Yeah, it looks like Caroline is our last person virtually to speak. So
We do have one that's having a hard time raising their hand. Can we select them?
Stephen Childs said he's trying to, he sent me a text, he's the owner.
Has
He's
he-
the resident who lived there.
has he emailed the landmark?
He said he did,
email
he
address?
registered. Oh,
He's-
email.
he's on
Sorry,
there.
what
He's
is
on there.
his
You can
name?
select.
Yeah, what is his name? We'll call on him
Stephen
after.
Childs.
Not that
Yeah.
we want to bring him in front, we just wanted to say.
Yeah,
just
got it. All right. Okay, so Caroline, we will, when you're ready, you can unmute.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Caroline Hoyle, and I live at 725 South Vine Street, near the intersection with Ohio Avenue. I have 2 young children, ages 6 and 4, and my younger son attends preschool at St. John's School. I do not know the current property owners. I'm here today to strongly oppose the landmark designation for the property. I came across this hearing only yesterday as my husband and I were walking by the property on our way to pick up our son from school. My opposition to the landmark designation is primarily rooted in the safety and health implications to the neighboring park and school. I walk by the lot every day and have watched the condition deteriorate over the past few years, including the retaining wall that leans out over the sidewalk on Ohio. I recently learned about the squatter issues, specifically the convicted felon who took up residence. I'm concerned that there is not a realistic or feasible path to funding the restoration of the original home in a timely manner, and therefore community safety and cleanliness will continue to suffer. There are owners who want to invest in revitalizing the lot, live there with their family, and contribute to the Wash Park community, and we should allow them to do so. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
I'm gonna call on Steve next.
So we'll call on Steve, who is having some difficulty raising his hand. Steve, I think you're with us. If you're with us and you can unmute, you can begin at any time. Steve, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. How are you? Thank you. My name is Steve Childs. I live at 1276 South Monroe Street in Denver. I grew up in that house, Wash Park. My parents bought it in 1945 and sold it to the Burnett family in 1963. I just wanted to correct the record on that because our name, the Childs family, never showed up in that original document that you produced. So my dad was a senior vice president with the Gates Rubber Company. He was a mining engineer. He made several additions to the house for our growing family. There's 4 of us that lived there at the time, including my parents, 6. So made a major addition to the family room and the bathroom on the north side of the house. He also constructed a mid-century modern style patio to the back of the house. All these are attached additions now. My parents also replaced windows, including the front picture window in the main floor and upstairs windows in the front of the house. In addition to the original house, he moved the original walls and added to the house and replaced the prominent original windows, which changed the look to the house. So in my opinion, it's not original Queen Anne. My dad grew up in a farmhouse in Nebraska that looked remarkably similar to this house, and that's why he liked it so much. It's a farmhouse. It's not a Queen Anne. The integrity of the house, my dad was constantly working on the structural foundation of the house. It's built on a brick foundation. The bricks are disintegrating. He's had numerous concrete additions to that to try to shore it up, but it's I'm afraid in very poor condition. So the house needs to come down for a number of reasons. Therefore, I strongly suggest that it not be designated as historic. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have one more person who has raised their hand. I'll just ask if you're joining us virtually and you do want to speak, please raise your hand now so we know if we have more to call on. But right now we have Kimberly.
And also, if you're having issues, please email landmark@denvergov.org and we can coordinate getting you in to speak.
Right. Kimberly, I think you're with us. If you can unmute, you can begin to speak at any time.
Hello, this is Kimberly. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Oh, hi.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm at work and I couldn't make it in person. My name is Kimberly Chor Thompson. I live at 1212 East Dakota Avenue, 1 block just north of the park. I've lived there for about 11 years. I'm raising 3 young children. My children actually attend St. John's School, right across the street, and from 800 South Franklin. And we live at this park. We ride our bikes, we scooter, we fish at this park, and we see 800 South Franklin on a daily basis. And over the past couple of years, it has really caused concern for the safety of my children, whom I allow to go fishing on their own there. Just in the last, about 2 months ago, I saw a gentleman walk onto the property with a stick or some sort of blunt instrument, and it caused some concern for the safety of my children, the safety of my friends' children, my community's children. I have many friends and families who still attend St. John's, and they've expressed concerns about their children's safety as well. I think if we have a family as outstanding as the Kohaki family, who is willing to invest their time and energy into the future of Wash Park and the community of Wash Park, we should honor that. As the prior speaker just spoke about, this property does not retain any of the original Queen Anne style. And therefore, I'm invested in the future of my community and Wash Park, and I would hope that the committee would also take that into consideration: the safety of our children, the integrity of our community, and building a vibrant community for the future, instead of dwelling on a past that, quite frankly, hasn't really shown that it warrants a designation, a landmark designation. So I strongly oppose it. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. I believe that concludes anyone who would like to speak virtually. So I will now close the public hearing comment part now at whatever time it is, 3:01. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for your comments. I think we now can hear from staff if there's any further recap or clarifications that need to occur.
Yes, do you want me to come up there?
Sure, yes.
This will be quick. So we just wanted to clarify that there's sort of 2 different purviews as to what staff and the commission looks like, and then if it would move forward, what city council would review. So per the ordinance, staff and the commission have a really narrow viewpoint. We and you look at, does this meet the criteria? If it is moved forward, it's specifically written into the ordinance that Denver City Council looks at greater things, looks at other things, the opinion of the owners and other things. They consider the politics. They can take the condition of the property into account. Both our staff's responsibility and the commission's responsibility is to look pretty narrowly at, does this meet the criteria or not? So I just wanted to make sure. I know there's been a lot of comments. Thank you everyone for providing comments as to what your purview is. So just wanted to clarify that for you. If you have any questions or anything, please let me know.
Thank you, Kara. Any questions? All right, thank you very much. All right, we are now ready to move into deliberation. It's 3 o'clock. We usually take a break. I'm going to suggest that maybe we're okay to push through, but if anyone really feels like they need a break. Okay, so yeah, what did you all think? How this application meets the criteria or not?
I can begin.
Sure, Nick.
First of all, I'd like to say these are my least favorite types of issues to discuss. And I have two hats, one as a citizen and the other as a commissioner. And they don't, depending on which hat I'm wearing, determines what viewpoint I have, and they don't agree. I'd like to commend the owners. I think you're trying to do the right thing. I'd like to thank everybody that came here in support for you. I mean, you must be terrific people because you have so many people in your corner, and that's a testament to you. But sadly, given what staff just highlighted, our purview is very narrow, and the criteria as listed, I think that the property does meet. And so, you know, I'm, as a commissioner, forced to support it. As a citizen, I don't. But fortunately for you, there is a next step with city council, and city council can look at broader issues. But I'm just one voice on this commission. The rest of the commission needs to speak, and we'll vote, and there's a possibility that this doesn't pass through this commission.
Thank you.
But I for one, am forced to support it.
Thank you. And I'll stick to the others.
I think I would be in opposition. I mean, I think in a 100-year history of a house, you know, I'm sure Judge William Burnett was a great guy, but to find a house where there wasn't a great teacher or soldier or police officer that won some awards, it seems like I don't know, a solution looking for a problem. And then the alterations that have been made to windows and shape and mass and form, they're the type of alterations that if they were presented on a designated house or even in a historic community, we would reject, right? We would say, no, we wouldn't approve those sorts. So in my mind, the alterations partly that have already been made and that make it indistinguishable to me, like which, are we looking at the historic piece or the alteration? The lines there are pretty blurry for me, so I don't see it completely clear. And then of course, yeah, just the state of disrepair, it just seems beyond the pale.
Sure, I'll go. I think I concur with a lot of what Nick had to say, although I find the criteria B to be nebulous at best. And I think that G is weak also. And I'm still debating where I am on this. I think that it is a good thing that a council has the last say and has broader discretion as to what they're reviewing based upon.
Well, that's an interesting take, Rusty, because I agree with you that I think criterion B is the evidence provided is not as good as I'd like to see. And I think in that regard, this does remind me a lot of the Montview project. I think that criterion C is to me clearly met. I think this is a pretty well preserved example of this kind of variation of the Queen Anne style. I actually think that criterion G is the next strongest thing that's met in the sense that a house of this era has been demonstrated to be rarity. And I know Wash Park well, and it's, yeah, houses this old are not common in Wash Park. And it's part of why I was asking about, you know, whether this was a kind of original farmhouse or not, is that if that were the case, then I would say that we're in a very different situation. But because this is in essence a sort of larger lot version of what we, see repeated along the edges of Wash Park on the east and west side in general. It's a little bit more nebulous, but I still think that it meets that criterion. I think that criterion F is honestly the one that is weak to me, in addition to B, because of the fact that it is not, the setback of it from the street, and the fact that it's one of many houses, kind of marching along the road, doesn't to me make it a prominent location, and I don't see the structure itself having physical characteristics that make it a particular kind of familiar feature of the neighborhood, as opposed to like many of the other historic homes on Washington Park. And it reminds me a lot of the conversation that we had, I think probably before a lot of other commissioners were on, but I think you were on, Erica, that there was a house we were looking at that was in, I think, 17th Street District, that if, this was seen as part of an overall district, that would make a lot of sense. But as an individual landmark, I think it's a little bit more dubious. I think this is maybe a slightly more strong case than that one, but I don't feel strongly enough that it clearly meets 3 of the 7 criteria to feel comfortable supporting making it an individual landmark.
Okay. Thanks, Larry.
And I have put the criteria on the screen for the commission.
Yeah, thank you. Emily.
I first want to say I greatly appreciate and commend all of you. You obviously love your neighbors and your neighborhood greatly, and will validate and support that. And I know it's a little bit off topic, so forgive me, but I'd say the unfortunate situation we all know occurred due to lack of disclosure of the MOU. So I presume you've looked into some type of ethics complaint if possible. I will say this home is significant and to me primarily because of G, due to the representation of the semi-agrarian development resulting in the atypical placement. But I think significantly it's not the original farmhouse, which was built, but it was built before the park and neighborhood was platted. So that's a very edge line distinction. I think that it does meet criterion C, and the next level to me would be criterion B, because I think it's a bit tenuous, and I agree with that. And criterion F, I also have questions about. So to me, given the totality of the information, I don't see enough to support an owner opposed designation currently, but this is still under process.
So we're clearly still deliberating, is that what we're, okay. Well, I guess I'll then give my opinion. I agree with Nick. Again, this is not fun. Not that I'm here to have fun, but and it's really unfortunate situation that is upsetting, on many levels for many different people for many different reasons. However, I do agree with staff that I think it meets the 4 criteria that have been claimed under the landmark application. I'll just kind of discuss them generally or in order. With B, we're talking about person or persons who have had an influence on society. When it comes to recognizing women's work within the home and out of the home, I do think that's an important thing to consider. I'm not exactly sure that I would say that those group of women had an influence on society. So that's a little tenuous to me. However, I do think that Judge Burnett, we're not talking about caliber of nationally known figures. We're talking about people who may not have been well-known prior to research and understanding how they've affected their communities and greater society, whether that's a local society, local community, or something bigger than that. I think Judge Burnett has been demonstrated to be part of that effort to more cognizant of the situations that people who are being prosecuted criminally, how they kind of got there, and if there are better ways to help them leave that type of activity behind. So I agree that Judge Burnett helps this house meet criterion B, since he was living there at the time that he was doing that work. As far as C goes, I think that's probably the least argued, at least among the commissioners. But this isn't a high style type of architectural style Queen Anne. It's just more simplified, kind of helps, or one reason why maybe some other members of the public just think of it as a farmhouse rather than any type of particular style, but I think it does clearly show those characteristics of the Queen Anne Free Classic. And then when it comes to F, maybe this is a little harder to define, but I think it's clearly, as staff has laid out, it's on a rise looking out over the park on a corner on a much larger lot that then was subsequently developed. So it's kind of creating this tension of how perhaps early developers of the neighborhood envisioned it would be developed and that what it ultimately became. And so I think showing that difference is an interesting and important way to understand this neighborhood and how it came to be. So which I think segues into criterion G and understanding that urban environment and how this house gives a distinctive physicality, showing that difference in development and is therefore rare, not just because of its particular style or age within this neighborhood, but also how it, again, is a juxtaposition from how the neighborhood then later developed into what we think of generally as Washington Park neighborhood today, as those bungalows from the 1920s and later. So, and when it comes to integrity, again, some changes have happened, but I think it is recognizable from its era and the associations that have been found to be part of its history. So I agree that it has enough integrity. So I believe that it does meet the criteria and that I would be in favor of moving it forward to council for their consideration.
Yes, staff or otherwise a point of clarity. So I still feel like I'm relatively new to this. And as far as criterion B, I appreciate your clarification that it was in part because he lived at the home during his period of most civic significance. Is that generally accepted as a significant enough association, or is it usually that there was an event or like the particular work was done publicly outside, like through that structure? Does that make sense?
Yes, so I mean, this is Kara's designation, so I might
Or staff in general.
let her answer that, but I will say I did read the designation when it came in, and we do research, like, is the person who we are claiming significance, were they living in that home at the time that they were doing their historically significant events? And we did find that that was true in this case. So we, again, are supportive of that criteria. I would also like to remind the commission that the designation ordinance states that it's not just these designation criteria that needs to be met. It's that the structure maintains integrity, and I think Erica did touch on that. She felt that the structure did maintain integrity, that it is more than 30 years or older, and that that you need to evaluate the structure's eligibility in context of the historical context of the city. So that is just a reminder I wanted to provide from our attorney. But I will turn it over to Kara if she has anything else to add there.
Yes, in terms of like your question about is it a strong association? Yeah, we did really look at, did he do his like reforming work while living in that house? Yes. The other properties that he lived in previously were demolished. So that was part of how we looked at like, are there other properties associated with it? His previous house was demolished, so this is the house that is most associated with him. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And I think that would tie into the broader historic context that there is no longer any other properties associated with Judge Burnett.
I guess I always find that last kind of tagged on consider the historic context is a little awkward, not because I don't agree with it, but I guess I would just like to point out that I think by my discussing of how this building fits into how the neighborhood developed, et cetera, like I'm touching upon the context that was being provided in the application and, you know, as I understand the city's development. So just want to make that clear that I feel like I've at least discussed that context, and I think other commissioners have in their comments too.
And I guess I just want to emphasize again, and I know that we've already gone through this, but given the heightened, emotion and understandable concerns of this, that the ordinance is so specific about what we can actually consider, because this has come up on quite a few other properties that, as frustrating as it might be for you especially, but also as citizens, the economic and the other concerns can only be considered by city council. So again, I know that's been emphasized, but I'm trying to iterate it both for myself and the public.
Thank you.
No, I'm sorry,
we're deliberating.
Okay,
So
for
you
those
can't-
safety
thank you.
considerations.
So any other thoughts about where we go? I think, sounds like Lars was pretty clear on where he stood. I think Nick and I are pretty clear. And it sounds like Larry's pretty clear as opposed to designation. I guess I'm just kind of getting at that I'm not quite sure we have a quorum. But just looking to other commissioners to see if they have any thoughts about where they stand.
And again, just for illustrative purposes, we have to have 5.
We have to have 5 commissioners to vote on whatever the motion is for it to pass. So if we don't have that today, then this will have to come back. Is that correct? I'm gonna let Adam clarify. Yes,
Hi,
please.
Adam Hernandez, Assistant City Attorney. Let me make sure I get this correct. So under section 30-29 of the municipal code, the concurring vote of at least 5 members is necessary to constitute an official act of the commission. So if 5 members cannot vote one way or the other, under parliamentary procedures, the status quo remains and it would act as a denial.
Denial of the application to designate.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Well, again, unless anyone else on the commission would like to share additional thoughts, perhaps somebody would like to make a motion.
Keep it tight to the vest.
I can put the suggested motion on the screen, but I'm not sure who is going to make the motion.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But it has to be one deny, sorry.
it could be either.
I guess it could be either, and then if it doesn't, whichever one doesn't pass, then yeah, unless someone else wants to make the opposite motion, it won't pass, and therefore the status quo will remain and the application is effectively denied.
Yeah, so any motion can be taken.
Yes, yes.
Anybody?
All right, I'm just gonna move us forward then, and I will make a motion. I'm going to use the simple one because I'm pretty confident it won't pass. I move to recommend approval of the landmark designation of 800 South Franklin Street, application number 2025L-005. As the basis for this recommendation, the Landmark Preservation Commission finds that the structure at 800 South Franklin Street meets the criteria for designation of a structure for preservation per the Denver Revised Municipal Code, section 30-3, as detailed in the staff report. Is there a second? Nick seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
3 against 3. So the motion fails. And does anyone else want to make another motion? All right, so that is where we land.
Someone for that.
Hold on.
Hello.
Oh, sorry.
Because it takes 5 votes to constitute any act, silly as it sounds, there should be a motion in the opposite, just to make sure it's accurate.
Okay. So would someone like to make a motion?
I move to deny approval. That's the same motion for that.
Yeah.
You can just say,
You could recommend denial.
no, it's not recommend denial of final.
I move to deny. I move to deny approval of the landmark designation of 800 South Franklin Street, application 2025L-005. As the basis for the recommendation, the Landmark Preservation Commission finds that the structure at 800 South Franklin Street meets the criterion for designation of a structure for preservation in the Denver Revised Municipal Code, section 30-3, as detailed in the staff report.
Need a second first.
Did I do it wrong again?
Oh, who's seconding?
Sorry, do we need to
Rusty's
clarify
seconding.
that if she read it
Excuse me,
wrong?
we will take care of it.
Okay.
Rusty's seconding. I make a friendly amendment to correct that it, the motion is stating it does not meet the criteria for designation.
I was just reading it.
Okay. Alright, and you accept as the motioner and you accept as.
Yes.
Okay, all right. All those in favor of this motion?
Aye.
3. All those opposed?
Okay.
Okay, it's 3 to 3. So this motion also fails.
Correct.
Okay. Therefore, in effect, the designation application is denied. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thanks for your courage. Appreciate it. Thanks for your courage. Appreciate it. Rachel, I really appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry, well, let's take a 5-minute break.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you for all of you who are still with us online. We are back from our break and ready to proceed with our design review projects. So again, thank you for your patience. Just to review this process, these are items that require individual consideration by the commission and are reviewed and discussed separately before each has a motion and vote. So we'll make sure that members have a chance to announce ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest. We'll then hear from staff who will introduce the application and their recommendation, after which commissioners may question staff. We will then hear from the applicant team for their presentation, which is limited to 10 minutes in total, and after which commissioners may ask any questions they have. Finally, we'll hear from staff clarifications if needed before we move into a deliberation for our motion and vote. So our first project is application 2025-COA-596. please. At 2834 Champa Street in Curtis Park F Historic District. And this is Crystal.
Thanks, Erica. So this application is for the
Oh,
property.
sorry, Crystal, I'm sorry.
Do we do the ex parte or?
Oh, I'm sorry. Does anyone have any ex parte or conflicts of interest on this project? Oh, we do.
I don't know if this applies, but I was on the Curtis Park Historic Review Committee before, so I've already seen this one.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that counts as communications outside.
Ultimately, the question is, can you make an impartial decision? Or were you involved in any of the design, anything like that?
No, I thought if I had any communications that was outside of the shared information.
I think it's good to announce, but
Okay,
yeah,
I'm good.
as
I'm
long
good
as
with
you're,
that.
yeah, okay, great.
I guess were the communications about this project specifically, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. In your review capacity?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not private, you know, it was Curtis Park Review.
I guess my advice would be if there's been discussions about this specific project, can you give us a kind of a link?
So, yes,
Or could you summarize in like a sentence
summarize what?
what the communications were about?
Window size, addition, and, you know, what would be replaced.
Wait, I'm sorry, Lars, you were on a the Curtis Park, like registered neighborhood organization, and you discussed it as part of your membership.
Right, before I joined here.
Before you joined the commission.
I would advise recusal in this case then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So then we'll need to ask you to leave.
And we'll come get you when this item is over.
Thanks very much. All right, so Lars is recusing himself for this project. All right, now we are ready for you, Crystal.
One more time.
Yeah.
Okay. So this application is for the property you see here at 2834 Champa Street, located in Curtis Park F Historic District. As you can see, it's a two-story structure and is contributing to the district. It was built in 1886. Next slide. So here you can see photos of the existing structure. The applicant is proposing alterations to the primary structure to restore it to a more original design. These changes include removal of the cement and vinyl siding to restore the original brick appearance, remove and replace all windows on the structure. The existing windows on this structure are all non-historic aluminum or vinyl. The applicants are proposing to replace them with windows that match historic proportions and operation and will be aluminum clad wood windows. They are also restoring the existing lintels and sills and will strip them of paint and restore them to their original condition. And the existing front porch you see here is called out as a replacement porch in the designation application for the district and is not original to the structure. So the applicants are proposing to replace it with a new wood front porch that better matches historic designs found in the district. Next slide. So here you can see some information about the removal of the existing cement mixture and vinyl siding on the existing structure, which is not original. As you can see on the right, underneath remains the original brick of the structure. Those photos are of the existing structure. So design guideline 2.5 states to remove later covering materials that have not achieved historic significance, repair original materials after they are uncovered, and test the removal of covering materials such as stucco or permastone to assure that the original underlying material will not be damaged. The applicants are proposing to remove the non-historic cladding and restore the house to this original brick cladding and repair with salvage brick to match where needed. The example photos on the left are another property that was restored in this manner. Although staff is supportive of restoration, some of staff expressed concern for the original underlying material based on the photos on the right. provided by the applicant. Next slide. So here you can see a mock-up of the existing house, kind of color coded to show where the stucco and vinyl siding is existing, as seen on the left, and then showing that non-historic porch and a non-historic dormer on the right, which are proposed to be demolished, and that rear historic addition that is also proposed to be demolished. Next slide. Here is the proposal for the new porch. Design guideline 2.39 states to use historic evidence to inform replacement of a missing front porch or stoop. And so it does also mention kind of looking at a sister house, which this one did, to reconstruct a porch or stoop based on historic documentation, appearance, and materials. So that's what they've done here. The existing front porch is non-original, and there is no historic documentation for what the original one looked like. So it is being modeled after a similar house across the street at 2821 Champa Street, as the house is similar in design to what this structure likely originally looked like, and that structure retains its original front porch. However, since this is a new replacement porch, to better fit the style of the house, the applicant has simplified the ornamentation of the porch in comparison to 2821 Champa Street's porch. So this new porch does seem to be appropriate and match the architectural style and scale of the existing historic structure and will be made entirely of wood. So staff found that it met design guideline 2.39. Next slide. And then here you can just see the demo calculations. The demolition highlighted in yellow is for non-historic portions of the structure, and then the demolition highlighted in orange is for original portions of the structure that are located at the rear of the primary structure. And the total demolition of the historic portions is for 24.3% of the structure. Next slide. So here's the new proposed site plan with the new two-story rear addition at the back. Here you can see how the new addition attaches directly to the rear of the existing primary structure. Most of the structure will be a flat roof structure with a small slope part at the west elevation to have asphalt shingles, which will likely appear more as a dormer from the front facade. Next slide. Here are the front and rear elevations. At the left, you can see that sister house we mentioned at 2821 Champa Street, which the new wood front porch design is based on. And at the right is the rear elevation of the new two-story addition. At the bottom, you can see the proposed materials for the new addition, which will largely be clad in Allura half-round shingles with a black modular brick wall at the very back on the rear elevation, which you can see at the right. Next slide. And then here are the side elevations. So at the top, you can see the east elevation where the new second floor courtyard will be located that gives some relief to the historic structure addition. And then at the bottom is the west elevation. And as you can see, the new two-story addition will attach directly to that rear elevation of the historic structure. And then here you can see the clipped part of that flat roof that'll be clad in asphalt shingle to match the historic structure and will appear more like a dormer from this side facing towards the street. Again, you can see it's just gonna have that Allura half-round shingle cladding, and the window proportions match the historic structure in the district. Next slide. Finally, here are some isometric views of the proposal from different angles. The west elevation at the top and the east elevation at the bottom. Personally find it a little hard to see how it's clipped because it's so dark, but hopefully you could see it better in your packets when you zoom in. Yeah, right there. Yeah. Next slide. So the proposed changes to the siding material of the historic structure to bring it back to original brick cladding and the new proposed porch alterations do better match the historic condition of the primary structure, meeting design guidelines 2.5, 2.20, 2.21, and 2.39. Additionally, the new two-story rear addition is subordinate to the historic structure and fits in with the surrounding historic context and uses materials common to the district, meeting design guidelines 3.1 through 3.10. Therefore, staff is recommending approval with the following conditions as these details are missing from the application. One is to update the plans with window cut sheets for the new windows and existing window openings. It clearly shows the inset of all windows into the wall plane by at least 2 inches. For a double or single hung window, this inset may be measured from the lower sash. And 2, to add section details and elevation showing the new basement window well and windows and label materials clearly.
Thank you, Crystal. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff?
I do. The last sentence in item 1, what's the rationale for moving that measuring point? It's a 2-inch offset that we're asking for, but we're pushing it 1 inch and 5/8 in.
I just took it from the guideline directly
Okay.
because I felt like it was unclear in the application. It said from the glass and it says from the upper or lower slat sash. And also it wasn't for all the windows because some of them are being replaced versus some of them are just new. So I felt it was just cleaner to have window cut sheets added for both that very clearly stated, so it's not confusing later on.
Yeah, it's just that dimension.
So we say you can measure from the lower sash because it is recessed more when you're talking about a double hung window. And we have gotten a lot of pushback on this very specific requirement. So this is this language was added when we did the last update to the design guidelines. We would love to look at this inset
It seems like that upper
again.
sash is gonna be flush with the.
Yeah, it does, like the upper sash potentially could be flush, but we get a lot of violations where windows are not inset into the wall plane. It doesn't happen as often with brick structures, but obviously we also have the clad, shingle clad structure here, and that does, we get a lot of violations where they're not inset into the wall plane, and also we've been told lots of times that it is almost impossible to construct with the requirements that we have. But that was just the update we made. And when did we last update our guidelines? I want to say 2019. To provide some additional clarity and flexibility on that inset because it's always historically been 2 inches that we've required. Don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready to hear from the applicants who must be joining us virtually. So I think you've been able to join us now, so you can unmute whenever you're ready and begin speaking. Please give us your name when you begin.
Hi, my name is Nick Leggett, and I'm at 2959 Franklin Street.
Great. Time is yours.
Oh, sorry.
No, please go. Please go ahead.
I'm here to present 2834 Champa Street. I am the designer on this project. The clients found this house and were really fell in love with Curtis Park, which, as we all know, is a really beautiful, super diverse historic neighborhood with a lot of diverse architectural styles. They really liked this house specifically because it's on a typically wider lot than common in Curtis Park. And so it has this kind of beautiful little side office addition that happened at some point in the early 1900s. And however, since then, the house has been kind of brutally mistreated. It has been shellacked in a coat of chain link fencing and cement with vinyl siding and pretty terrible selection of vinyl windows and aluminum windows, depending on which one you're looking out of. But they saw the opportunity here to really build a house that they could live in forever and grow their family. One of the things that we really wanted to make sure was part of the plan was to bring this original structure back to its former glory. It was this beautiful little brick house, and I think it has the potential to go back there. We are really wanting to remove all of the existing vinyl siding and cement mixture. We're working with, his name is Ruben. He's the Curtis Park brick guy. He's done a bunch of these houses previously with this exact same mixture. It's actually not adhered particularly strongly, which is concerning. It's basically a tap of a hammer and it kind of peels off like a sheet. There is a little bit of face damage to some of the bricks, but I have spoken with Curtis Park neighbors, and they, from personal experience from a bunch of them, have said that the adherence of that extra kind of sticky grout is pretty easy to get off with patience. We are committing to fully restoring it, so we want to make sure that that's clear that, we know there's going to be it's going to be an adventure to fix it. But we do believe that it's really important part of this house to keep that, to bring that back to life. And same with the windows. Obviously, the windows are a super important feature of this house, especially, being a Queen Anne style and in this neighborhood. So we're investing in, Marvin Ultimate aluminum clad wood windows, and happy to conform to the clarifications as needed by staff, and should be able to meet those recommendations and requirements easily. The back addition, we want it to disappear. The entirety of it is smaller, shorter, and narrower than the existing house. And the only real front-facing feature of the house the addition is designed to look like a dormer. It's also 50 feet back on the lot, so behind the original roof line. So we're imagining it's not going to be incredibly visible from the street, in addition to the immense amount of trees and foliage and stuff that's really common on this block of Champa Street. The porch is another really important thing that we really want to make clear. The original porch, non-original porch is kind of an eyesore, and it's also deteriorating rapidly. So we want to make sure we invest in the front of this house, and give it something that echoes the neighborhood. But we want to be clear, as per guidelines and both Denver guidelines and National Historic Preservation guidelines, that it's clear that it's a new porch, which is why we reduced ornamentation. It still has a pretty standard 5-inch diameter post, which is a common diameter in Curtis Park. A little background on me: I've done a lot of work in Curtis Park. I'm practically on their agenda every other week. So I know a lot about porches, fortunately or unfortunately. Beadboard ceiling, kind of the traditional trim detailing with these, shortened posts, trying to echo the neighborhood, but not Disneyland copy it, so that it's clear that it's new, and echoing, as Crystal said, the house across the street. The other really important part for us was to make sure that this strange office, kind of territorial style thing on the side of the house is really highlighted, as it is pretty unusual and is part of the original house. As a result, the addition touches the very rear roof of it, and is stepped back from its facade. One of the other things we wanted to talk about is there is an odd window pattern on that specific building and the remnants of an old chimney. We're keeping all of it. That big open window seems to have been an access door at some point, and we'd like to highlight that bit of the history by turning it into a window. And obviously, the function of these windows and doors is very important to us. We're going to keep the original front door. There used to be a transom above it, which again is a super common characteristic of Curtis Park homes in particular. We want to bring that transom back, so we'll put that up in there. Restore all the old original sandstone sills. They're pretty beautifully carved, and luckily the paint's not too sticky on those. And echoing function, and replacing the function of all the existing of what windows used to be there with new windows. So double and single hungs were appropriate, especially in the really amazing bay window space, and the two kind of like primary windows on the main floor and upstairs, and kind of bringing that patterning into the addition with the two upstairs single hung windows there's a bedroom up there. Materially, we also wanted to be very clear that there's a distinction between new and old. We could have very easily done this whole thing out of brick, but I think I wanted to be very clear that this is kind of a shadow that lurks behind the old house and is designed to be as minimally visible as possible to celebrate this kind of beautiful, very classic Curtis Park red brick house. And one of the things that I think I love about Curtis Park, and especially the owners, my clients, they love the degree of ornamentation that is really common in the neighborhood, and kind of the really eclectic diversity of architectural style. And in one of our very first meetings, we talked about this beautiful fish scale shingle that's pretty common in the neighborhood, and especially common on these 2 to 3 blocks of Champa, where kind of the biggest, grandest old houses are. And we were thinking about how to use this in a kind of respectful, subordinate way to kind of honor and be part of the rest of the house, or part of the rest of the neighborhood. So the goal here is really to give this house a new face back to the neighborhood and kind of add on to it in a respectful way, that our clients can live here and contribute to the micro community of Curtis Park, while also kind of giving this house back to Curtis Park, because it's kind of been hidden in the shadows for a really long time. And we're really excited to bring it forward. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Nick. Commissioners, any questions? Larry?
Just a kind of technical question. I think it probably is to some extent either here nor there, but are you certain that the upper story that's covered in vinyl actually is a brick structure underneath and not possibly wood?
We are 95% certain. The wall thickness and kind of we've peeled a couple layers back. Contractors have poked around there. We're fairly certain it is brick. The other thing that we have talked about with Curtis Park neighbors is those 2 windows up there are slightly off from a historic proportion. So once we kind of get into this, we're wondering if they were widened or enlarged in some way. And so because if you look at the house across the street, for example, they're kind of a more narrow and closer together window. And so we were thinking that either, this house was different, which is again, super common in Curtis Park, or at some point in the 50s, 60s, 70s, someone got a deal on windows and needed to make 2 bigger holes. So the vinyl, once the vinyl comes down, I think we'll be able to determine. And again, we're committing to kind of bringing it all the way back. So if we need to edit those window sizes and bring them down to a more historic proportion, or they could just be what they are, that remains to be seen. But we're again reasonably 95% certain that the entire brick house is brick. So
thanks. And yeah, I had a similar thought about the windows.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions?
I know this is very minutia, but just because it was highlighted on the RNO report, I presume that the sister house also has 5-inch posts.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you, Nick. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, any recap, Crystal? Or
I would just say if they do need to come back for anything or fund anything, as long as it meets the guidelines, those are typically revisions we can do administratively. If it was changes to the front facade that they met the guidelines, potentially could be on consent review.
Okay, thanks. All right, we are ready to deliberate. What are your thoughts, commissioners?
Seems to meet the guidelines to me.
I think it's pretty successful. I applaud the knuckle. I mean, it's difficult to tell because everything's so black on the back there, but the transition from the old to the new is done well. And I think as I say, is successful.
Yeah, it's surprising that something so temporary generally would, from the, street facing view that is our primary concern, would really recede so well. And I think it does that and meets the guidelines of the process.
I agree.
I do too. Great. Would someone like to make a motion then?
I'll take it. I move to approve with conditions application 2025 COA 596 for the alterations to the primary structure and a rear second story addition at 2834 Champa Street as per design guidelines 2.5, 2.20, 2.21, 2.39, 3.1, 3.3, 3.6, 3.7, 3.9, 3.10, character defining features for the Curtis Park Historic District. Presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following conditions. 1, update the plans with window cut sheets for the new windows and existing window openings that clearly show the inset of all windows into the wall plane by at least 2 inches. For the double or single hung windows, the inset may be measured from the lower sash. 2, add section details and elevation showing the new basement window well and the windows and label materials clearly.
Thank you, Emily. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes and you have been approved with those conditions.
I'm gonna get Lars.
Okay.
Lars.
Right, so this is for application number 2025 COA 661 at 480 North Humboldt Street in the Driving Park Historic District. And we'll hear from Crystal again.
Any conflicts of
Oh, yes.
interest before we proceed?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so this application is for the Phase 2 design detail review for 480 North Humboldt Street in the Driving Park Historic District. The applicant is requesting to construct a new 2-story single-family residence with detached garage on an interior lot. The demo for this existing duplex and for the Phase 1 approval was reviewed and approved at the August 5th, 2025 LPC. Next slide. So here's the site plan. The proposed site footprint is compatible with the lot coverage patterns found in the Driving Park Historic District and has not changed from the original application. Next slide. Oops, sorry. And here's the roof plan. Again, has not changed. It is a hipped and gabled roof form for this proposed Spanish Revival style and matches roof styles found in the district and of this architectural style. Next slide. So here's the front and rear elevations of the proposed 2-story house. The style of the proposed structure will be a modern interpretation of the Spanish Revival style. The new house appears to match foundation heights found in the district, as well as entry locations and sizes. The window locations and proportions match what is found in the district on Spanish Revival style homes. The new windows will be multi-light and recessed into the wall, and scaling elements like sills and decorative surrounds have been added around the front door, as well as irregular windows like the quatrefoil, which add articulation of the facade, meeting design guideline 4.3. At the bottom, you can see the proposed materials for the new structure. The new house will be clad in a true 3-coat cementitious stucco with a smooth finish in the color crystal white, which is characteristic of the Spanish Revival style, with a Boro Villa tile roof in the color Windsor, which is a more tan color than the typical red of the style, but will help subtly differentiate it as new construction. The home uses a simple combination of materials, matching the character of the district and meeting design guideline 4.7. Next slide. And then here are the side elevations. Window proportions and design are typical of the district. Windows are mostly vertically proportioned with larger openings on the ground floor, smaller openings on the second floor. Windows will have a simple terracotta bottom sill, which you can see on the materials at the left, that appear to match other Spanish Revival styles found in the historic district, and are simulated divided light, aluminum-clad wood windows that match materials and designs found in the district and the character of Spanish Revival style homes. Windows will be inset more than 2 inches into the wall plane, and door heights are common to the district. Therefore, windows and doors meet design guideline 4.8. Next slide. And here are the front and rear garage elevations. The new garage will use the same materials as the primary structure, that true 3-coat stucco finish, as well as the Boro Villa tile roof, and is a simple combination of materials meeting design guideline 4.19. Next slide. And then here are some section throughs at the left of the house and window details at the right. As you can see, the new windows will be inset more than 2 inches into the wall plane, and we'll have those aluminum clad wood, simulated divided lights, divided light windows with that shadow spacer bar in the center. Next slide. And then finally, here are just some isometric views of the proposal from different angles. Next slide. So the new 2-story house and 1-story detached garage in the Spanish Revival style is compatible with the surrounding context and uses high quality durable materials that are commonly found in the district, meeting the design guidelines. Therefore, staff is recommending approval.
Thank you, Crystal. Any questions for staff? No. All right. We are ready to hear from the applicants. John, when you're ready, you can unmute and begin with your presentation.
John Mattingly, 517 East Bayard Avenue, Denver 80209. Thank you, Crystal. I think you did a great job summarizing the materiality of this. It's pretty simple in form, and we used all honest materials and real cementitious stucco. The idea was to present it as a masonry building with the final coat of smooth concrete stucco. Which tends the wall thickness at about 10 inches and the windows set back within that 3.5 to demonstrate this as a solid masonry building and with a concrete final coat on it. And so other than that, the material usage I feel like is pretty straightforward and pretty honest. And so I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add other than yeah, I think that summarizes it. The roof itself is a concrete barrel tile, as opposed to a more historic clay tile, and so I think that does meet the criteria without trying too hard to be historic and is budget friendly at the same time. So it was a good win for us and the client. But I think that's all I have to say on the topic.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions? All right, it seems straightforward to us too, I guess. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any recap? No recap. So we're ready to deliberate. It's very straightforward. Yeah. Seems to meet the guidelines.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Would someone like to make a motion? Emily's been doing the heavy lifting, so someone go for it, Larry. Oh, okay.
I've got it pulled up.
Okay.
I move to approve application number 2025-CLA-661 for the new construction phase 2 design details at 480 North Humboldt Street as per design guidelines 4.3, 4.5, 4.7, 4.9, sorry, 4.8, 4.19, 4.20, character defining features for the Driving Park Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Larry. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rusty. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes and the project has been approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that concludes our agenda for today. So I will close the meeting at 4:11. Thank you all.